Return to the past with a warehouse. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 451, Farewell to Chang'an. Although they were new Wits, their marriage life was not all love and affection. Li Ju and Chen Guiyang had made preliminary plans for the girls' school before marriage. Chen Guiyang took all the information, only slightly changed the content related to the government and establishment, and sent it to the Queen and the Emperor. A few days later, the government decree was officially issued, announcing that the Chen Guiyang Girls' School would be officially opened at the southeast corner of the intersection of King Hekwa Street and K Street. The first year of Chen Guiyang Girls' School was a trial run. Although Chen Guiyang was an honorary Jiju, he did not directly participate in teaching. The first year was mainly to train lecturers, supplemented by taking in students. In other words, most of the students in the first year would be future tutors. At the same time, the girls' school was responsible for the compulsory education of girls, mainly teaching them literacy, needlework, morality, etc. Chen Guiyang planned to first take in homeless girls whose parents had died or were abandoned by their parents. Because seeing Yu Yaoniang reminds me of her and her sister. If someone had helped them at that time, they wouldn't have fallen into such a miserable situation. Fortunately, they met you in the end, Chen Guiyang said with emotion. Since she married Li Ju, she regarded Li Ju's brothers and sisters as her own brothers and sisters, and Li Ju's friends and teachers as her own friends and teachers, and also regarded Yu Yaoniang and Unraveling as her sisters. Of course, there are also close and distant relationships between brothers and sisters, and Chen Guiyang is no exception. She will prefer the little princess and Zhao Sanjiu who get along better with her, but she will not ignore the most distant Li Dongniang who she has never even met. She is calculating the expenses of the school. For her sake, the teachers of the girls' school are not going to take the tuition for the time being, which saves a lot of expenses. The expenses of the school building are the private money of His Majesty the Emperor and the Queen. The house itself is Chen Guiyang's own property, and it rents out for 100 taels every month. Chen Guiyang doesn't care about this 100 taels of silver. Let's not talk about her salary. After Li Ju took care of Chen Guiyang Prefecture, the tribute to Chen Guiyang increased by many times, especially the salt industry, which is now in the hands of the government. Even though the price of salt is so low, there is still a huge profit. The next is the tuition and living expenses of the students. Chen Guiyang took in homeless girls for education as a welfare, and this expense was borne by the couple. In the future, when it is open to noble ladies and wealthy businessmen, a high sponsorship fee will be charged. Although Chen Guiyang and Li Ju have planned how to support the girls' school for a long time, they still hope that the girls' school can run on its own. Otherwise, how can they open a branch school? They planned to open a branch school in Jinling, where they would borrow a property that Sanjiu bought before as a school building, and it would be easier to raise money. Jinling is rich and can afford a girls' school, but other places may not be able to afford a girls' school. However, Chen Guiyang thought of the girls with similar fates as Dongniang and couldn't help but want to plan more for them. In places where the sun doesn't shine, how long and to what extent the weak can live depends entirely on the moral level of the strong. Most people have basic conscience and will not kill or rob, but rather plunder and rob. However, it is not uncommon to see such outrageous situations as the village under the Eagle Cliff where Fu Gai's parents lived. It is not just women who have been bullied for a long time. Men who have no power, no good physique, and few good brothers are also the objects of exploitation and oppression. However, women are more likely to fall into the situation of the weak because of their innate lack of physical strength. Every time Li Ju built a self-help poorhouse, he would take care of the old, weak, lonely, disabled, women and children together, forming a tradition of old and new, allowing the old who have a craft to teach the young, so that the young can have meal, or to subsidize some labor tools for those who are still able to work, so that they can be self-reliant. Chen Guiyang's plan for a girls' school originated from the poorhouse planned by Li Ju, and she also hoped to achieve the result of allowing everyone to be self-reliant in the end. After the Chen Guiyang Girls' School was opened, many young and open-minded ladies took the initiative to sign up. Some of them wanted to make more connections, especially to get to know Chen Yaoniang, who was at the top of the pyramid and second only to the queen. Some were out of kindness, knowing that Chen Yaoniang would accept a group of poor little people, so they also came to contribute their kindness. Others, such as Yaoniang, were bound by their talents in the boudoir. They were also well-read women who could memorize poems and books, and wanted to have a stage to show their talents, but were trapped in the boudoir because of their status. If they had a few children, grandchildren, and brothers to help them raise their children, it would be good, but they didn't have such an opportunity, and a small number of them simply wanted to have a legitimate reason to go out and breathe. After all, playing cards, burning incense, and having banquets all required clothes, food, hiring people, renting cars, and giving gifts and affection. There were too many expenses, and there were always people who couldn't afford it. The ladies and noble ladies with their own concerns soon filled up Chen Yaoniang's quota. Encouraged by this, Chen Yaoniang was even more enthusiastic. So much so that there were a few nights, when Li Ju was sleeping soundly with his wife in his arms, Chen Yaoniang suddenly said, "Gaokai Qian's needlework is too poor to be taught this." For a time, Li Ju suspected that he was not working hard enough in the fields, which gave his wife time to think about this in bed. In short, with Li Ju's efforts, the structure of Chen Yaoniang's girls' school was quickly built, the preliminary courses were arranged, and the first batch of students also hurried to start teaching and learning from each other, and there were more than a dozen girls taken in. The girls taken in this time were basically abandoned babies picked up from villages all over the capital. Chen Yaoniang asked people to search for orphans everywhere, and those who were too young and infant boys were sent to the poor relief center, and those who were older and could read stayed in the school. By then, the autumn harvest had passed, and every household had some surplus food, so they could still afford to raise a few children. The number of children they took in was not particularly large, but these abandoned children and orphans, the youngest of whom was a month old and the oldest was only 4 or 5 years old, could not be sold for various reasons, so they were thrown out by their families. Because some of the children were much younger than planned, Chen Yaoniang also spent extra money to hire a middle-aged woman to take care of them as they grew up. After all the work was done, it was early September, the time planned for Chen Yaoniang and Li Ju to return to Jinling together. Even if they were reluctant, they had to go. Originally, Chen Yaoniang was pushed to the forefront of rumors because of his remarriage, and the couple were both restless. Li Ju's steam locomotive was placed under the wall of the palace for people to see for free. The paving of the railway track was in full swing. Every day, I don't know how many people came to see the wonder. Since they saw the wonder, they couldn't help but say something about Li Ju, the new son-in-law. The girls' school in Chen Yaoniang was also a topic of gossip. This school was located in a daughter street full of excellent shops and tea houses. I don't know how many girls gathered here to play cards and drink tea to kill time. This street and the school stayed on the topic list in the capital for a month. These topics should not have affected Chen Yaoniang. It was really because of Sanjiu's affairs and the past of the Yang family. The emperor and empress did not want their daughter to be talked about behind her back. In addition, Li Ju's technical station was not yet clear. He had to wait until those things were finished before moving. Returning to Jinling earlier would actually allow him to return to Chang'an earlier. Therefore, the emperor and empress reluctantly let the young couple return to Jinling. Chapter 452, Return to the South 1. After receiving the order from the emperor and empress, Li Ju and Chen Yang planned to pack their bags and return to Jinling. Xiao Zhangang and his team of craftsmen were to stay in the capital to continue making locomotives. His Majesty needed a few locomotives with good looks. Currently, the only people who could make them according to the drawings were Xiao Zhangang and several craftsmen recruited later, so Li Ju kept Xiao Zhangang. His Majesty the Emperor issued an order to set up a Fengrang construction office and ordered the Ministry of War, the Ministry of Households, and the Ministry of Works to cooperate carefully and not to shirk any responsibility. The first task received by this Fengrang construction office was to build a steam locomotive. Xiao Zhangang's task was legitimate, but he still lacked personal safety, so the third prince took the initiative to take over Xiao Zhangang to prevent some people from plotting against him. Xiao Zhangang's wages and bonuses were still paid by Li Ju, but he lived in the Yanwang mansion, where the third prince was finishing up the furnishings, and his entry and exit were also taken care of by the third prince's people. Li Ju left a sum of money to the third prince, asking him to pay for his work and living expenses, and also left a few shops on the daughter street for Sanjiu to manage. Except for the little bell worker, everyone else, including Dong Niang, would return to Jinling with Li Ju. The departure time was set on the 3rd day of September. On the night of the 2nd day of September, Chen Guiyang went to the palace to stay with his mother for one night. The next morning, Li Ju went to the palace to take Chen Guiyang away. The couple said goodbye to the emperor and empress, and then set out from the palace. The third prince and Sanjiu led the people sent by the emperor and empress to escort them all the way to the ferry outside the city. The ferry had already been parked with a team of official ships, all of which were the largest ships visible on the inland river, and the boatmen were all sent by the government. The third prince and Sanjiu were sent to the ship together. The third prince checked everywhere and repeatedly told the officials of the Ministry of Rights and the Ministry of Internal Affairs who were accompanying him not to be careless. His Majesty the Emperor and the Empress would always keep their eyes on this couple. Only when the wind was just right and the time was right did the third prince and Sanjiu get off the boat. They watched from the shore as Li Ju and Chen Guiyang's fleet gently left the ferry, turned to the center of the canal, drifted eastward, and gradually disappeared in the morning light. On the way back, they planned to arrange as Chen Guiyang had said before. They planned to hold several buffets at the places where they stopped to rest and replenish supplies along the way, and invite the locals to come and have a feast. They took a month by water and 2 months by land. They needed to replenish supplies 6 times in total during the waterway, and had to stop at the shore temporarily every 4 or 5 days on average. The 6 replenishment locations were all common supply ferries, all of which relied on the busy intersection of the canal to develop very prosperously, especially the large transshipment ports where other rivers converged. Every year when it came to the season of paying taxes and transporting salt, there were even more ships, and a large number of merchant ships and official ships gathered here, supporting a large group of people who ate, and correspondingly, a large market. Other supply cities have no other rivers flowing into them, so they are relatively backward, but they are still well developed. Supply ships always need to purchase supplies. There is a stable local market, and even if they sell some handicrafts, they can supplement their family income. This is what the residents near Chuncheng, the first supply point, think. In addition to farming and fishing, they usually hang around the ferry. They can earn a lot of money in a day by being porters, hangers-on, guides, selling food, drinks, and daily necessities, doing odd jobs, etc. There are also people who are not clean and do some stealing or even robbing, especially for small merchant ships that don't have a few strong men who are good at swimming. They can't guarantee that they will leak money and be robbed by drilling through the bottom of the ship and sinking it into the river. In recent years, it has been better. Inland shipping has become increasingly developed, especially after the emergence of Kingshan Express. This express is often the leader, and several merchants travel together, hiring dozens of strong retired Navy soldiers to escort them. These people are good at fighting on the water, familiar with the situation on the waterway, and are officials. Ordinary pirates dare not provoke them. As for the unusual pirates, they have not been forced to become pirates, so they can still work hard honestly. Even if there are those who dare to take risks, they dare to rob the lone official transport ship, but they dare not attack the particularly large fleet. Li Ju's fleet consists of more than 20 large ships. The flags in front are the flags of the Imperial Army, and there is a phoenix flag specially granted by His Majesty the Emperor in the middle. Although it is not the black, yellow, and red flying dragon flag used by the Emperor, the flag with gold foil phoenix pattern on the crimson background is so tall and large that it is already a clear announcement that the people here are noble and cannot be provoked. Chuncheng Ferry is in the center of the city. Surrounding the canal, a large urban area has been developed on both the north and south sides. However, due to the artificially widened river channel, there is little communication between the two urban areas. Last year, Guangdong submitted a memorial to the emperor, wanting to divide Chuncheng into 2 cities, north and south, and hand them over to 2 different county governments for management. This decision was also made based on the local reality. Since the opening of sea transportation, most of the ships from Yu Yaoniang to Yu Yaoniang have been transported by sea, so there are fewer merchant ships heading north and south, but there is no change in the number of ships heading east and west. Instead, there are more. However, in the past, most of the ships passing through Chuncheng by shipping docked at the north bank because they were selling goods from the east, especially silk and tea to the west. Now, there are also many ships docked at the south bank, bringing food and coal from the west to the east, as well as a large amount of gold, silver, copper and iron. The south bank is the prosperity created by the merchant ships going east, and in general, it is considered a new area. The south bank has always been left alone by Chuncheng, but Heking County, the county town adjacent to the south bank of Chuncheng, is the seat of the county government. The current county governor Chen Wu is very pragmatic. He did not abandon this area just because Chuncheng did not belong to his jurisdiction. Instead, he used the resources of Heking County to support the southern area of Chuncheng. When the South District was just developing, the public areas were in a mess. There were no roads, bridges, or police officers. When there were disputes, it all depended on who was stronger and could fight. When building houses, it all depended on who was shameless and could occupy more space. As for thefts, there were countless. It was not until Chen Wu intervened that the South District had a backbone and a serious plan and pattern. Not only that, Chen Wu also tried his best to strive for the qualification of the technical station experimental site. If Chuncheng was not really poor and Heking's main income was not farming, it might have been done. Li Ju and Cheng Guiyang planned to stay on the south bank for a day, replenish supplies, and feast guests. This location was also suggested by His Majesty the Emperor and the Third Prince. They said that, because Chen Wu was very sincere, they asked Li Ju to come and see it when he passed by. In fact, there was nothing to see in Li Ju. This place was not yet time to develop. Its real resources came from underground coal. Yes, there are huge coal resources in the Chuncheng Heking area, and some of the coal mines are even open air and can be easily mined. Over the past few thousand years, the coal here has been developed and used on a small scale, but it has not been developed much due to market and transportation constraints. However, when the steam engine is officially promoted, this place, as well as most of the nearby Guangdong Road, will become the energy center of Dayang, and will serve as the heart of the empire before the oil resources are developed. So Li Ju went all the way to Chuncheng with Cheng Guiyang to enjoy the scenery and the mood of sightseeing. The tower ship hoisted its flags from afar. The people on the shore saw this unfamiliar fleet, which was dozens of tall and deep tower ships with gorgeous appearance. They had already realized that this was a big job, and they hurriedly began to greet people on the shore to prepare to grab the job. The farmers who were burning straw compost in the harvested fields by the farmlands beside the several canals near the ferry were no exception. Chapter 453 Return to the South too. Mom, there are so many big ships outside. Zhensu, the daughter of a farmer in the southern suburbs of Chuncheng, was originally piling straw in the field. When she saw the fleet from afar, she skillfully dropped her rake and ran home to report the news. Why is there a big fleet coming today? Don't they only come to our place on the 1st, 2nd, 5th, 7th, and 8th? Today is the 9th day of the first lunar month. Although they were puzzled by the sudden appearance of the fleet, Zhensu's parents and brothers and sisters didn't say a word, picked up their food, and rushed to the ferry. This is a typical family that relies on the ferry boats to hunt wild. They can't compete with the professional ferry workers. Usually they can only rely on luck to make a living at the ferry. But when the large fleet docks, the professional ferry workers are too busy, and those extra opportunities are their jobs. The suburbs where the farmers live are a little far from the dock, but the fleet is farther away. Those who received the news ran to the dock and squeezed in, while the fleet was still paddling leisurely. Pearl's father and brothers brought shoulder poles, hemp ropes, frames, and poles, trying to grab some shoulder carrying and hand carrying jobs. Sister Pearl was strong, but had a lot of brains, so she rode a tricycle bought with the money her family and neighbors pooled together. The roads in the city were newly built and relatively smooth, and wealthy families were willing to ride tricycles or even ride their own tricycles. She was also a girl, and the female relatives would not look down on the driver's gender. In the end, the money earned was divided according to the proportion of the money pooled. It was just enough to make a living. Pearl's mother was not in good health, so she sold some food at the ferry, mainly homemade pickles, dried vegetables, preserved fruits, dried fruits, and baked cakes. The food on the boat was not very good, and the boatmen and passengers would usually go ashore when replenishing supplies, to take the opportunity to improve their meals, or buy some snacks and roadside dishes, to eat on the way. Pearl and her younger brother and sister were young, so they followed their mother to sell some food, and see if they could find sewing and laundry work. At this time, superstition prevented women from boarding ships. Although inland waterway shipping was not as dangerous as sea shipping, this superstitious rule still affected inland waterway shipping to some extent. Therefore, there were always very few female relatives in the fleet, and some fleets had no female relatives at all. If the men could not do it themselves, they would usually find a few female workers at the supply point to pay for it. In addition, in summer, the boatmen would fetch water from the river to clean themselves. In winter, it was too cold, so they usually paid for a hot bath at the supply port, which was also a source of income for the port. Pearl's family was too far away from the port, and they could not earn the money from ground reception, so they could only work harder to earn something else. Pearl's family squeezed together at the ferry, trying to squeeze to the front and do more business. However, this fleet was different from any previous fleet. In the past, there were official ships docking, and there were also ships of high officials and nobles with dozens of soldiers coming down first, but they would clear the field in advance. This time, there was no clearing, and the soldiers who came down first directly escorted the host family to the post station that had been arranged long ago. Others were free to move around, so hundreds of wealthy guests suddenly flooded into the southern part of Chuncheng. As A was seasick, so Li Ju didn't want to ride him, so he just led him for a walk. As A had been very constrained on the boat these days, so Li Ju was ready to take Aze to the neighborhood after he settled down, to see the people's sentiments, take a walk, and choose a place for the buffet. Chen Guiyang was really seasick this time, so Li Ju accompanied her to settle down first. They stayed in the best room in the post house, and Ziking led people to busy themselves with things, fetching water, lighting fires, cooking, boiling water, decocting medicine. This post house was vacated early, and a lot of food and necessary supplies were prepared. The attendants who came to the outpost in the early stage also bought some in advance. At this time, everything had to be available. Chen Guiyang's place of stay had been arranged with a brand new step-up bed early. Although it was not as good as a large step-up bed in Jiangnan, it was as good as a small house, but it was fully equipped with brocade quilts and embroidered curtains inside and out. Chen Guiyang's face was pale, and he wiped his body and lay down. Li Ju saw that something was wrong, so he asked the accompanying imperial physician to see him. He confirmed that it was the summer heat after autumn, the fumigation of water vapor on the water for several days, and the influence of seasickness. It was not a big problem, but he was a little uncomfortable. The imperial physician left a room for Huaxiangsun, Zenki pills and other things. Li Ju took a look and found that there was nothing poisonous, so he let them go. Chen Guiyang rested for a while and said that there were some daughter's matters to discuss with her mother and maids. She also said that it was getting dark and it would be too late if Li Ju didn't go out for a walk. After urging Li Ju, he finally went out. Li Ju didn't suspect anything. In fact, staying here for one more day would delay the return trip by one day. He chose a place today, and he could set up the banquet tomorrow and leave the day after tomorrow. In this way, he could return to Jinling as soon as possible and suffer less from the hardship of traveling. Li Ju changed into a simple travel robe, tied up his cuffs and trouser legs, and asked what he should bring back while tying the bandages. Chen Guiyang thought for a while and said, "I heard that there is a clay figurine maker here who makes clay figurines very well. I want a pair of clay figurines like the two of us." Li Ju knew it as soon as he heard it. This is a good idea. The clay figurines can be made into one for you and one for me. When they don't like them anymore, they can break them together and then make another one for you and another one for me. This means you are in me and I'm in you, and we will never be separated in this life. Ziking and the others laughed. Chen Guiyang blushed with shame and covered his face with a handkerchief, urging, "Come and try to coax me again. Stop talking nonsense. Go quickly and come back soon." Li Ju responded, picked up his sword and went out. After he left, Chen Guiyang asked everyone else to leave and only left Ziking by his side. He asked hopefully, "What did the doctor say?" Ziking smiled and said, "Don't worry, master. It's only been a month and you're already pregnant, and there's no diagnosis. The doctor said it was the summer heat and seasickness that caused your loss of appetite, dizziness, and nausea. You just need to rest for a day. If it's still like this, let's not take the water route, but the land route. It'll just cost a little more money for the journey." Chen Guiyang then lay down with no interest in life. Ziking said again, "Master, you just got married. It's too hasty to want children. I think the prince consort still wants to spend a few more years with the master." Chen Guiyang said lazily, "I thought so too. But now I have changed. I really want a child who looks like me and him. Or just like him. Since getting married, I seem to be living in heaven day by day. You listen, when I coaxed him to buy a clay figurine, he would follow the topic to make me happy. He was just talking, but it made me feel very happy. What's more, he was not just talking." Ziking, "I'm so scared. I'm afraid that, if something changes in the future, I will have no thoughts. If I have a child, it can be considered a comfort." Ziking stopped talking and fetched the medicine from outside in silence. Li Ju never thought that his wife would be worried about having children just after being married for a month and just after the honeymoon. To him, this matter cannot be rushed, and he doesn't care. His Li family was not originally from Dayang, and there was no inheritance here, so why was he so anxious? Another thing, the old world would be shattered sooner or later. If he had descendants, what would happen to them at that time? Would they become corrupt like zombies because they had been in high positions for a long time, or would they inherit his rebellious spirit and make a call from the top? Or would they be cut off in the long river of history long ago? Those were too far away, and after he died, who would care about the flood? Chapter 454, Return to the South 3. Li Ju took the laissez and strolled on the streets of Chuncheng South District. The buildings in the emerging urban area are very new, and the main roads are made of cement, so they are very flat. Li Ju noticed that many people wore brown and shorts without any seams. This means that the cloth used to, so the clothes is more than 1.8 meters wide, and it is very likely that it is the homespun cloth woven by Qingshan textile machines that has gradually spread. Although people are dressed simply, the shoulders and elbows of the clothes, the buttocks and knees of the pants are pudding on pudding. Li Ju even saw someone wearing a small shirt made of Qingshan cargo sacks. Li Ju couldn't help but think of the most difficult times in the modern plane, and some people used bags for fertilizer as clothes. The rational reuse of resources is the same everywhere. The market in the urban area is held all year round, and there are also big market times, but the shops and vendors also make a living on weekdays. Li Ju wandered around the new urban area and ordered 2 clay figurines from a clay figurine shop that he thought had the best craftsmanship, and then he went to the ferry. Li Ju had long noticed the dirt roads extending along the river on both sides of the ferry. It was obvious that people had been traveling back and forth for a long time and had trampled out such roads. There were many people, and they were moving frequently. It was not a proper official road, but most likely a nearby residential area. When Li Ju bought the clay figurine just now, he gestured with the old man who spoke half good Mandarin and roughly knew the locations of several villages and towns nearby. There were contiguous villages to the east and west. There were secondary villages formed by a part of Chuncheng and the indigenous residents of Heking County. They were a bit like the village in the city, formed by future strong laborers working outside, but they were much more backward and thin. The ferry was crowded, and the crowd had not dispersed yet. There were hundreds of people in Li Ju and Chen Guiyang's fleet. In just half an hour, many people had not got off the boat, so those who were making a living were still eagerly waiting for new work. The solicitors crowded forward hoping to get an order, while those who occupied the land here set up their positions at the construction site nearby. There were shops along the street with colorful signs such as bath soup, restaurant, braised chicken, apricot blossom wine, and small stalls selling baked goods, sewing, snacks, and herbal tea. It was bustling and lively everywhere. Li Ju looked in both directions for a while. There were more people in the west, and there were both men and women, young and old. There were fewer people in the east, basically strong men and uncles with teenagers. The water here flows from west to east, so naturally there are more boats coming from the west. In order to get the news earlier, people will camp as far west as possible until there is no room nearby. If they camp further away, they will be so far away that they will not have time to get a sip of soup when they arrive at the ferry. Then gradually no one will continue to extend forward. Li Ju stood at the ferry for a while. A little girl who couldn't squeeze to the front shrank back in frustration. She put one hand on the wall, but felt that the touch was wrong. Why is this wall warm and rough? This little girl is Zenzu. She is only 11 years old, thin as a monkey, wild as a monkey, and she works the hardest in the crowd. But not every time you get something in the crowd, you will get something. 9 times out of 10, she can't even drink the soup, but she still enjoys it. As long as she succeeds once, her family can have a full stomach for a while. So Zenzu's family will work hard to grab the work. Zenzu was not disappointed because she didn't get to the front and couldn't squeeze in today. She was used to it. After she ran out of strength, she stepped back to take a breath and rest, and everyone else did the same. Until she was holding the wall to catch her breath. She felt that the wall was a little strange. No, it was not a wall at all. Zenzu suddenly raised her body and looked over. She saw a very tall and big black horse shaking its legs unhappily, and she was now pressing on the knees of the black horse. Next to the black horse stood its owner, a very tall and strong young man with very clean clothes. Li Ju and Zenzu looked at each other for 2 seconds and said, "My horse won't kick people, but you should be careful too." Zenzu was familiar with Mandarin and could hear that Li Ju asked her to be more careful. This was not important. What was important was that she could hear that Li Ju's tone was gentle. Clean clothes plus tall black horse plus saber plus gentle attitude equals fat sheep. An empirical formula quickly flashed through Zenzu's mind. Even if this person was dressed simply, it could not cover up his fat sheep nature. Master, would you like to buy some food? The specialty of Chuncheng, chicken head cake, is the best made in my family. Would you like to buy some hay and dry food for your horse brother? Would you like to wash and mend your clothes? Do you have any unwanted items that you want to wrestle? Would you like to stay in a hotel? Would you like to eat? Would you like to go to the bathhouse? I know this area best, and I run fast. You can hire me as a guide. Although Zenzu's Mandarin is average, she actually has an 80% Mandarin accent in such a long string, and only some of the ending sounds still have the characteristics of the local dialect. This is amazing. I don't know how long she has memorized it, and how many times she has said it. Li Ju suddenly thought of Yu Yaoniang. When Yu Yaoniang was forced to save herself, it was also at a ferry. She stopped him and wanted to sell herself as a slave. Li Ju thought to himself that he had nothing to fear and was not afraid of anyone having any bad intentions, so he smiled and said, "Okay, I'm just in need of a guide." He untied a small cloth bag filled with copper coins and small silver coins from the luggage on the saddle and gave it to Zenzu, saying, "I want to take a look around and find out what's going on. If you have time, take me for a walk." Zenzu was really bold. When she took the purse and saw that it was full of copper coins and a few small silver coins, about 1 or 2 taels, she was so happy that she didn't care at all that Li Ju was a kidnapper or thief. She put the cloth bag away, put on her small backpack, jumped up happily and said, "Master, where shall we start? What do you want to see?" Li Ju didn't expect her to be so lively. It seemed that the previous words were not completely memorized by rote. Maybe she thought of the words herself and asked someone to teach her. Li Ju smiled and said, "I just want to see how the farmers and farm women here live and whether they are diligent. I think Chuncheng is pretty good and I want to buy some land as an industry." Zenzu didn't quite understand what he said, but she got the idea and said, "Oh, I know. How about we start from our village? It's less than 2 miles to the west. It's the nearest village to the city." Li Ju didn't care about good or bad, so he said, "Okay, let's go to your village first. Can you ride a big horse? Can you sit steadily? Okay, you get on the horse and show me the way." Zenzu didn't expect that she could ride on a guest's horse. In the past, the guests were willing to slow down because she walked slowly, which was already very good. This guest asked her to ride a horse. Zenzu was not shy at all. She happily let Li Ju carry her onto the horse's back and carefully grasped the handle in front of the saddle. She found the family member closest to her, her mother, who was riding a tricycle. On the soft seat of the cart were two fairy-like maids. Zenzu greeted her mother, then pointed the way, and walked straight west. Mother Pearl looked at her daughter's back as she happily rode the horse, and scolded her with a smile. Then, remembering the two distinguished guests in the carriage, she quickly adopted a cautious attitude. Chapter 455, Return to the South 4. The two maids in Yu Yaoniang's carriage were the escorts brought by Yu Yaoniang, not very important ones, so they had to wait until this time to get off the boat. For example, Yu Yaoniang and their group of confidants had already got off the boat with Li Ju and his wife. They all recognized Li Ju and knew that he was a simpleton. When they saw him leading the little girl away on the horse, they began to whisper, "Wasn't that the prince consort just now?" It was the Marquis of Fengrang. The Marquis's horse is half a head taller than ordinary horses, so it's easy to recognize. Besides, isn't there embroidery on the saddle? That's the saddle our princess brought. He actually let a little girl ride the horse while he walked. You don't know, this is not the first time. I've heard a lot of such stupid things. Hey, the cart driver, the one sitting on the horse just now, was that your daughter? Yu Yaoniang smiled ingratiatingly. Yes, it's a little girl. I don't know what kind of blessing she was in this life, to have the Marquis lead the horse for her. This is a treatment that only our princess can have. Zenzu's mother rubbed her hands awkwardly. Your master is kind. He doesn't despise our girl, and he takes care of her. I will have to talk to my girl later. Don't let him take advantage of me because of his kindness. That's right, the prince consort led the horse for her. Only our princess has enjoyed it before. Zenzu's mother was also happy for her daughter, so she walked harder and suddenly passed through the crowded crowd and went to the post station. Zenzu and Li Ju, who were gradually going away, didn't think it was a blessing or not. Zenzu was bold, and Li Ju wanted to walk faster, otherwise he would ride a horse and let Zenzu follow him. How long would it take? It was even more unrealistic for the two to ride together. No matter how young Zenzu looked, she was an 11-year-old girl who could be called a half-grown girl in ancient times, so it was necessary to avoid suspicion. The southern area of Chuncheng was not big. After leaving the ferry a little, there were only 2 or 3 rows of houses, and there were only low adobe bungalows and fields. Zenzu is very familiar with this area, and can speak freely. This is Zanayazi village. The village chief lives under the big poplar tree. The village chief is a very nice person. How is it nice? Well, the head of the family, Mrs. Liu in the village, died. Her parents wanted to sell her, but the village chief stopped them and said that the widow and orphan were pitiful, so he asked his daughter-in-law to bring a meal to Mrs. Liu every day. Think about it, sir, who would be willing to support someone for free, and they don't expect anything in return? Li Ju pointed to an old man staggering in the farmland not far away and asked, "Is that piece of land also from Zanazi village?" "Yes, that's right. That piece of land was reclaimed by the village chief and his people. I heard that they were fighting with the neighbors at the beginning, but it seems that the county magistrate here is very good, a fair and just person, so both sides gave in. The two villages reclaimed that large piece of wasteland together and agreed on the boundary. Oh, it's not easy. A county magistrate can deal with the two major forces, local and foreign. Yes, but the people in our area are also good. If it were the people in Duncan, the county magistrate would not be able to help them. They would be beaten as usual. I heard that all the girls born in their village were drowned. The county magistrate took care of it for a while. It was fine when he was there, but it was gone when he left. The county magistrate made a monument prohibiting drowning girls and put it there, but it became a place where they dumped their daughters. If a little girl like me was born in Duncan, I would have lost my life long ago. Zenzu chatted about the neighboring villages of Duncan and Zanayazi village. As they strolled to the next village, which was Jiang'anbao, the village where Zenzu's family lived. The head of our village is also a good man. He is my cousin. We are from the North Bank. Jiang'anbao is a real emerging village, a few years later than Zhenyazi village. Even Zhensu grew up in the North Bank until she was 8 years old before moving here with her parents. Therefore, Jiang'anbao is a vibrant village, and even the elderly have the energy to take a walk. The spirit of a person cannot be concealed. When Li Ju had just successfully conquered Qingshan City, the people of Qingshan looked different at a glance, not to mention the confident, strong, and energetic people of Lian. The people of Zhonggan Fort were the same. Although they were poor, they had hope, so that kind of poverty also had vitality and hope. Although wild grass is also grass, it is of course very different from lying hay. As soon as Li Ju and Zhensu arrived at the boundary of Zhonggan Fort, some children playing on the ridge of the field came up to them and asked sweetly, "Uncle, who are you looking for? Are you looking for a place to rest? We have a stable at home. Uncle's horse can be tied at our house." Li Ju was afraid of hurting the children, so he stopped in front of Aze with his hand raised high. "I'm not going to rest. I'm just going to see if there are any butchers or chickens and ducks nearby. I'll buy some meat, chickens and ducks and treat everyone to a meal. Yes, a banquet, a buffet." Zhensu got anxious when she heard it. "I have them at home. I have them at home. Buy mine." The children got anxious too. Regardless of whether they had them at home, they started clamoring to buy their own. Li Ju finally broke free and asked again. It turned out that the people here had heard about the lessons Li Ju gave to the nearest technical stations from the passing merchants and the notices of the county government. After some thought, they also started a side business. Their main and sideline business is to grow greenhouse vegetables, based on the abundant fuel resources here. They have also developed their own greenhouse methods for hatching chicks, ducks, and geese, and raising pigs, sheep, dogs, and rabbits. Because of their poor skills, their success rate is not high, but they are committed. If they invest 100%, they can get 150% or 60% back, and they can always get an extra 10% or 20%. Therefore, every household here has a lot of extra income, which can feed a few more children and elderly people. It is impossible to eat enough, so everyone is pale and thin, but at least they can not give up any family member. Even if someone gets an acute or serious illness, the clan and neighbors can get together to get 2 medicine plasters. Li Ju was pointed to the yard in front of her house by Zhensu. Zhensu then reluctantly got off the horse and rushed into her house. After searching for a long time, she couldn't find a bowl to entertain guests, so she had to roll up the green bamboo leaves behind the house and fill a bucket of water in the broken wooden cup and bring it to Li Ju. Her family rarely entertains guests, and being a guide at the ferry is also an agreement with other hotels. They use the hotel's money to bring guests. Zhensu also specifically explained, "This is boiled water. We all know that we should drink boiled water. Chungcheng is not short of fuel, so everyone has really learned a new habit of boiling water." Li Ju looked at her solemn expression, took the cup from the leaf, drank a sip, wiped his mouth, and then said, "Your place is really good. The people are good. Really? Then you can buy land here. The wasteland on the other side of the mountain can be sold next year. 2 taels of silver per mu is not expensive at all. Buy it, buy it," Zhensu said with hope. They just moved here, and there is a lot of wasteland to be cultivated, but they can't plant it all. They dig 2 mu of land and sow a few sorghum and millet seeds a year. They can sell it for 2 taels per mu every 2 years, which can bring in dozens of taels of income a year. Li Ju smiled and said, "Good girl, whether our family buys land or not is decided by my wife. I came to take a look today. My wife and I are newly married, and we want to invite people to wedding banquets and hear more auspicious words of congratulations. We don't accept gifts, not a penny, just purely invite everyone to eat and drink. I think your place and the next village are good. Otherwise, we can hold a banquet in your village and invite everyone from dozens of miles around to have a drink. As long as they can come, they will be invited." Chapter 456 Return to the South 5. Although it's not about buying land, it's not bad to have a banquet. At least you can see some eggs, duck eggs and meat at the banquet. Zhensu thought of the smell of eggs and meat and swallowed her saliva. Okay. In fact, there are not many people here, just a few hundred. Dozens of tables can be set up. Master, the chicken, duck, Fish and meat in our village are also cheap. Just buy them in our village. Okay, why not? I have to go back and tell my wife first. If my wife agrees, I will come to book the table. Is there anyone in the village who can take charge now? I'll talk to them first. Li Ju has actually already chosen Zanaya's village in Jongan Fort in his heart, but he still has to go back and talk to his wife. After getting married, you are a family, and the affairs of the couple naturally have to be discussed with the other half. Zenzu quickly called the uncle who stayed in the village today to look after the children, property, and land. Li Ju left a deposit for the uncle and asked him to sign the receipt. He wanted a total of 50 chickens, 50 ducks, 500 fresh and salted eggs, 100 large fish, 50 katas of small fish, 100 katas of pork, 50 katas of mutton, 5 dogs, and 200 katas of various dried vegetables. The uncle remembered quickly. This was a big fat sheep. Their village couldn't eat it all, and it could be sold to the neighboring village. Li Ju waited for him to calculate the list, copied the receipt, and paid 50 taels of silver as a deposit. The two of them each took a deposit and agreed to give a definite answer as soon as possible, no later than tomorrow morning. The uncle was overjoyed at the income. He had to stay in the village, and it was inconvenient to send Li Ju out of the village. He told his son and Zenzu to follow Li Ju well, and send him directly to the post house where Li Ju lived, and then come back. Li Jiu couldn't refuse, and he also wanted to go to other places nearby, so he still needed a guide, so he agreed. Coincidentally, the son of this uncle was 9 years old this year, and had been engaged to Zenzu. It was not against etiquette for the two of them to ride on the same horse, at least it was not a big problem in the countryside. Li Jiu let the two of them ride together, and he still took Aze for a walk. They went to the most unavoidable village, and made a big semicircle along the road in the south, detoured to the east of the ferry, and passed through the east village mentioned by Zenzu. Li Jiu noticed that some of the remaining people in the village, especially the dirty and greasy-haired men, looked at Zenzu with lust in their eyes. There were no girls in the village, but there were a few women working in the fields and on the roads. The eyes longing for women are matched by the powerless and pale cries on Chen Washu's monument for forbidden drowning of girls, and the body of a baby girl who should have died not long ago under the monument. A small girl lies on the stone base, and there are wild dogs staring at her not far away. There is also a group of crows gathered on the monument. Li Ju paused, found a saddlebag from the luggage, carried by Aze, put the stiff and thin body of the baby into one end of the saddlebag, and held it in his hand, ready to go to the cemetery in Chuncheng to give it to the cemetery keeper for burial. Zenzu and her little fiancé whispered to each other for a while, and suddenly asked Li Ju, "Is she dead?" Li Ju waved his hand. Zenzu said again, "Oh, it turns out to be true." Li Ju looked at her, thin and small, full of vitality, like a black-skinned wild monkey. Zenzu's family might be very poor. She might have to start working when she was 7 or 8 years old, and she might have to work hard digging for food in the next few decades. But the people of Jongan Fort supported her, and her brothers and sisters. Then Li Ju left without a care in the world, and all his good mood was washed away by the body of the little baby. He was as listless as Aze, and he asked the people of Chunching about the location of the cemetery, and sent the baby there to explain the situation, and then walked the rest of the way dejectedly. It was getting late, and Li Ju found Zenzu's family at the ferry, returned Zenzu and the little fiancé to Zenzu's parents, and turned around to take away the clay figurines of him and Cheng Guiyang from the clay figurine shop. The old man who made clay figurines was really talented. Just by listening to the description, he made Cheng Guiyang 50% similar to Li Ju's own. When put together with Li Ju's own, who would not praise it as a match made in heaven? Li Ju held the box and came to the entrance of the post house. He saw the mutada, Chusan, Shibei, Dong Niang in men's clothes, and several other maids and attendants squatting under the door eating melons. They spit out melon seeds all over the floor. Everyone was laughing, and even Arda's face relaxed a little. His mood was a little better. The Marquis is back. When they saw Li Ju, they hurried over to greet him. Chusan took the initiative to lead the horse to the stable. The mute still followed Li Ju like a silent wall. Dong Niang disappeared again. Shibei, Guiz, and Cheng Yang's maids chattered loudly. Li Ju responded a few times, handed the clay figurine in his hand to Gizzy, and asked her to deliver it to Chen Guiyang first. Suddenly, he asked, "Why didn't Yaoniang go with you?" Gizzy replied, "My sister has official business. The county magistrate next door happened to be inspecting here. I heard that the prince consort and the prince were coming, so I came to say hello. Now his wife is talking to the prince, and the county magistrate asked Lee to receive them. Lee also asked someone to look for you, but maybe they took the wrong road and didn't see you." Lee Ju stopped and turned from the direction of his room to the direction of the guest hall. He asked several maids to report to Chen Guiyang that he was back and met the guests first before going back. In fact, it was to avoid going back directly and bumping into the county magistrate's wife and offending other women. And it would be better to meet County Magistrate Chen first. Li Ju had a good impression of this county magistrate. Chuncheng had its own bureaucrats, and County Magistrate Chen was the county magistrate of Heking County next door. It was not easy for him to settle the southern district of Chuncheng and let the two sides live in harmony. County Magistrate Chen has been in this position for 6 years. Li Ju did not even change his clothes. He wore a civilian's clothes for manual labor and came to the guest hall of the post house with a long sword. In the hall, County Magistrate Chen was talking happily with Yaoniang. Yaoniang was wearing a casual official robe, and so was County Magistrate Chen. At first glance, it looked like two colleagues discussing official business, and the atmosphere was very harmonious. This was strange. In order to avoid causing trouble, when Yaoniang handled official business on behalf of Li Ju, she always kept her words as precious as gold. However, when he saw Chen Wu's face, Li Ju understood that Chen Wu was the kind of person who could make people let down their guard the most. He had a fair complexion, was kind, and spoke with a smile, just like the honest and kind old man next door. He was wearing a blue glossy satin robe, which was half old and half new. He held a cattail fan in his hand, which was made of local cattail grass, and had a missing corner on it, which could be used to cool off and repel mosquitoes. This was even more approachable. Chen Wu didn't know Li Ju, but looking at Yaoniang's attitude, he knew that the young man in front of him was the real person. He quickly stood up and bowed to Li Ju. "My lord, I'm sorry to bother you with my visit." No, you're doing a great job here. His Majesty has praised you before. I should have come to visit you. It's just right that you're here." Li Ju and Chen Wu sat opposite each other, and Yaoniang automatically stepped behind Li Ju and sat side by side with the mute dame. She took out a small notebook and began to take notes. Li Ju and Chen Wu flattered each other for a while and practiced take-eye to perfection. In the end, Li Ju was young and energetic and was stimulated by the baby in the afternoon, so he got to the point first. "I see that the county magistrate has a lot of wonderful methods under his rule. Most places are very effective, but there is one place that I really don't understand." Chen Wu put the palm leaf fan aside and sighed. "My lord, you don't need to tell me. I know where it is. It's Duncan, right? Kidnapping and trafficking are rampant, girls are drowned, and countless old, weak, women and children are injured. Oh, it's difficult to deal with." Chapter 457, Return to the South 6. Li Ju observed Chen Wu's expression, which did not seem fake at all. With Li Ju's many years of experience in investigation, Chen Wu was telling the truth now. He really had no way to deal with Duncan. It seemed absurd that a county magistrate could not do anything about a village, but it was actually normal. Let's not talk about the inefficient administrative system, where laws were not implemented in the countryside and orders were not issued outside the city. Let's talk about Chen Wu's identity. Chen Wu was not an official from Chuncheng, but an official from the neighboring Heking County. It was difficult for him to control Duncan. Chen Wu had tried to educate the people of Duncan before, but it was useless. "I once moved the government office to the neighboring town of Duncan, just to stop people from abandoning or drowning babies, but it was useless. They suffocated the baby girls to death when the mothers gave birth, and lied that the babies died of suffocation in the mothers' stomachs. Or they deliberately created accidents." Chen Wu recounted the accidents he had seen with his own eyes, and finally counted on his fingers. "I was stationed in Duncan for 2 months, and I saved a total of 4 girls, 2 babies, and 2 children. That's all." Chen Wu couldn't stay in the neighboring village for a long time, and it was even illegal for him to go to the neighboring village to work. As soon as he left, the solid state of Duncan sprouted, and they started to not want daughters again. Chen Wu once thought that Duncan was too poor to raise children, but later found that it was not entirely true. It is true that some families can't afford to raise a population, let alone baby girls, and even baby boys are sold. But some families gave birth to 3 or 4 baby girls. In order to scare the baby girls and prevent them from reincarnating, they killed the baby girls and buried them at the intersection for people to trample on, intending to show that this family does not welcome daughters. The former can still be saved. As a very pragmatic county magistrate, Chen Wu has ways to revitalize the local economy, even though there is a barrier of Chuncheng. However, the county magistrate of Chuncheng does not care much about the southern district. Chen Wu actually has certain actual power in the southern district of Chuncheng, especially when he does not make trouble and only makes money. The government of Chuncheng will be more laissez-faire. Therefore, after Chen Wu took out the 3 axes to revitalize the local economy, reducing taxes, defining responsibilities and planning the ferry, the trend of drowning girls in Duncan has indeed improved a little. Only a small number of people, about 10% or 20%, think it is not bad to raise a daughter until she is 5 or 6 years old and then sell her. But a larger part of people who make money just want to raise a few more sons. As for the latter problem, the educational method used by Chen Wu has no effect. The educated families are 10 times worse. They shout all day long that only girls and villains are difficult to raise, and they have learned the habit of generations of educated families who wash girls, so they are more justified in drowning girls. Even though Chen Wu taught some of the families who had survived the hard times in Duncan, they gradually realized that daughters were also human beings. After getting married, they were still connected to their natal family by blood, and their daughters' children were also their own relatives, so they were willing to raise their daughters. But once they returned to the villagers saw some families raising daughters, and they couldn't help but make noises and laugh at them for raising money losing goods. There were even old bachelors and old ruffians who took the opportunity to bully and tease those girls. These families had no choice but to marry their daughters off to other places early, or move their whole family to the town, so the atmosphere in the village did not improve at all. Chen Wu also tried to use welfare institutions to take in baby girls, but this was a huge burden, and even those families who didn't want to abandon their daughters threw their daughters here. And taking in abandoned baby girls can't stop people from killing infants. Li Ju listened without saying a word. At last, Chen Wu sighed again. I was indignant at the moment and said too much, causing trouble to the Marquis. Chen Wu came here to show his hospitality as a host, to say hello and to show some gratitude, but because Li Ju took the initiative to bring up the matter of Duncan, he had a lot of grievances, but nowhere to vent, so he couldn't help but say more. Li Ju replied, to be honest, I just came from the monument to forbid drowning girls, and personally sent a dead baby girl to the cemetery for burial. Chen Wu was stunned, and couldn't help showing a sad look on his face. It's better than leaving it there to be dragged away, and eaten by wild dogs and wolves. Li Ju lowered his head, and curled his lips, and said, I took the initiative to talk about this matter, because I wanted to ask, how can I help you? Chen Wu said, that's what I wanted to say. My lord, can your technical station also be counted as a part of Heqing County in Chuncheng South? Our county government is responsible for all the expenses of the officials and people selected. I just want to find a way to make our place more prosperous and last longer. Li Ju said, that's easy. You pick the candidates. If you are quick enough, you can still leave with us the day after tomorrow. There are plenty of empty seats in our fleet. It will save travel expenses if you take them away. I don't want a penny from you, so I will naturally go to the Ministry of Revenue to fight the famine. Chen Wu took the opportunity to attack the snake. Hey, that's great. I will go back and get it done tonight. To be honest, I already have more than a dozen people here who specialize in studying the letters you sent. Look, composting, manure fermentation, earthworm farming, pig slaughtering, breeding. These are all things we explored based on what you sent us, but we are not doing well. If we have any questions, we have to figure them out ourselves. Every one of them has a book of questions waiting for you to answer. What you said is really like a sleepy person meeting a pillow. Isn't this a coincidence? Timely rain. Chen Wu even spoke in his hometown dialect, which showed that he was really excited. Li Ju was moved and felt as if there was a new job to be arranged. There must be many places like hacking in the world, and it seemed that he could still do something. We have gone off topic. The problem now is the matter of Duncan. Li Ju thought about future events and explained to Chen Wu, "I'm afraid it will be difficult. My ancestors also worried about this matter. Their approach at that time can be summarized as follows. Education is the top priority, not selective education, but universal education. Everyone must read, learn to be a good person, and learn skills, regardless of gender, age or status. The more books you read, the better your morality will be, and you can always be like a human being. And if you learn more skills, you can always earn a living. If you are excluded here, you can go there. The daughters you give birth to can also make money for the family when they grow up. Many families would rather let their daughters comb their hair and never get married, so that they can earn money for the family to support their brothers and nephews. Since raising a daughter has such advantages, you have to raise her. People are all profit seeking and fame seeking." Chen Wu nodded. "It is true that you can explain it with reason and move them with benefits. It's just that the expenses are high, so we have to set up the economic account book here first." Li Ju said, "Yes, this matter relies on the local government's income and clan income, plus sacrificial fields, building public schools, and exploring other income projects. With more money, we can support education for several years or even decades. From this, the second point is derived, which is to create more opportunities for women to make money. The textile factory where I live has long been full of female workers. Now even many women work in heavy physical work such as road maintenance and mail delivery. In this way, they can earn 30 to 50 taels of silver a year. How can her family be willing to kill her? They would rather she stay in her parents' home and live on her own for the rest of her life." Chen Wuxin nodded and shook his head. "This move relies on the abundance of fish and rice in the south of the Yangtze River. Here, alas, the land is still not enough to produce grain, and we don't have the money to buy it outside. It depends on the specific situation. I'll make plans after I have sorted out everything about you. As far as I know, your problem here is not that there is little arable land, but that you have a special advantage that cannot be used for the time being, but it will be soon." Li Ju was talking about the relationship between coal and steam engines. Once steam engines became popular, this generation would immediately turn over a fortune, so he was not worried at all. Another point is to give women equal or partial land rights, that is, to give them the right to share the land. Li Ju knew that the most effective way was to take the mother surname, but in this era, taking the mother surname was equivalent to erasing patriarchy. Once proposed, he would be strangled. He didn't have to be so radical. This matter would not be understood even after thousands of years, let alone now. On the contrary, land, property rights, is the simplest way for a place that is about to become an energy zone. Li Ju proposed this point not simply for the sake of women. He thought further. Chapter 458, Return to the South 7. There is no doubt that Hacking County will be the energy center of the empire in the future. If the coal mines are controlled by a few aristocratic families, it will be completely contrary to Li Ju's original intention. The use of coal mines is far less important than in the future. The black-hearted mine owners in the Jiangnan area have also done many things that take human lives lightly. Li Ju can imagine what the situation will be like in the coal mines after the arrival of the steam age. At this time, in order to evade taxes, people are often willing to rely on scholars and landlords with their families and become hidden heads to avoid being levied on population taxes. Li Ju hopes that at least in Hacking and the area near Hacking, ordinary people will not easily give up the ownership of land. Chen Wu is proficient in general affairs. After careful consideration, he knows what Li Ju means by dividing the land. Many business owners in Jiangnan are now women, so naturally the daughters of Jiangnan are particularly precious. That is a golden dragon girl who can manage the family business, give birth to children, and bring a large dowry and connections. Yes, but I'm afraid it will take a long time to work. Duncan has always been restless. If a family has fewer boys, they will be bullied by the same village and neighboring villages. In such an environment, how can the women protect the family business? Li Ju agreed with Chen Wu's concerns. So, there is actually a way that works faster. It may not be so accurate. Please ask the Marquis, what is the definition of accurate? It can only change the atmosphere, but it may not save the life of every girl. Divide and rule. Li Ju knew a little more than Chen Wu, so he came up with this idea by chance. Take advantage of the fact that your majesty is about to divide the southern area of Chunsheng and merge it with Heqing County. There will inevitably be a reorganization of villages, towns, and neighborhoods. The people of Duncan will be dispersed and assigned to other places, especially young people who are not married, so that they can be separated far away. Young people are most easily influenced by others. They see how other girls grow up. As long as they are not completely bad, they will always know that they cannot kill people at will. If there are those who are stubborn, they will be sent to places like Zanayazi village, where the customs are relatively positive, and they will be neighbors with the people who love to inquire about other people's private affairs and spread them everywhere. With a little hint, anyone who dares to show the slightest dislike for the daughter or other emotions will be spread everywhere, and will attract opposition and interference from the villagers. Li Ju thought of the implicit dissatisfaction with Duncan in Zenzu's words. He was sure that places like Zhangganbao would be able to deal with the new neighbors relatively properly. Take advantage of the replanning of the area here, and move Duncan out, saying that it will be used for the expansion of the ferry. Each person will be compensated in full according to the amount of houses and land, and an additional 1 or 2 acres of land will be allocated. This amount of money should be able to be raised. After all, Duncan is not where they were born and raised. They moved here later, and even the village name has not been officially chosen. I believe they will not have any intention of moving away. Chen Wu thought about it for a while. This is a slow and steady job. Just persuading Duncan to move, and persuading the villagers to accept new neighbors, will take a lot of thought. However, it is all worth it, as long as no new wronged souls appear under the monument to prohibit drowning women. Everything is worth it. I will use several methods. Divide and rule first, at least to prevent those who have some good intentions in their hearts from being dragged into doing evil. I calculated that there are 41 households in Duncan and 26 households in Yu Yaoniang village next to Duncan. We need to move 1,400 acres of land, 83 houses, and a total of 300 people. It will cost about 5,000 to 6,000 taels of silver, which is a large amount, but it is not impossible to raise. Education must also be promoted. Even if it is not for this matter, it should be carried out. The changes in Qingshan City are seen by everyone in the world, which is enough to show that reading and literacy are the foundation. Even if a person I have to spend 3 taels of silver, and it will take 10,000 or 20,000 to be enough. It is difficult to raise this money. We still have to get rich first. Only when we have money can we do things. We also need that textile factory. Now, because this area has been newly cultivated for a few years, there is only so much land, so there are more people. First, we will open 2 factories, to encourage them to raise more children. When there is more land, they will have to raise children even without this factory. Especially after the people we sent to study with the Marquis come back, and build our own technical station, there will be a huge gap. I'm afraid that those who killed my daughter indiscriminately in the past will regret it so much that their intestines will turn green. Chen Wu calculated quickly. Li Ju listened to him calculating one by one, counting the manpower and money and grain, and where to move some from bit by bit. He calculated the comings and goings, and even had a definite number without making a draft. Just like Zhao Xiansheng of Qingshan County, he had been dealing with the local money and grain for a long time, so he could know everything like the back of his hand. What is even more rare is that Chen Wu never thought of collecting the required money, grain and manpower through exploitative methods such as increasing taxes. This kindness alone was enough to make Li Ju look at him with a frown. Such an official was worthy of Li Ju's deference and help, so after he finished calculating the bill, Li Ju proposed, well, let me give you another idea. the government can get involved in the joint venture, but considering that your successor will hardly be as wholehearted as you are for the people, I personally suggest that you be reserved. Chen Wu had also heard about the power of coal joint ventures, cement joint ventures, and textile joint ventures. It was heard that, as long as you got a share in Kingshan City, the dividends would fall from the sky every day, and it would be enough for you to lie down and eat, drink and have fun for the rest of your life. Chen Wu tried his best to find out the relevant information about the joint venture, but the joint venture with dividends to share is highly dependent on the profitability of the industry itself. Not to mention the special relationship between Heking and Chuncheng South District, it is difficult for Chen Wu to directly plunder Chuncheng South's industry. Another most important problem is that there is no such profitable industry in the Heking area. The ferry has only been around for a few years, and is just a seedling that can barely make people nearby eat more. Chen Wu said, "What does the Marquis mean? Imitating the Dingbo Port Maritime Customs, our government will also participate in the industry of this ferry, but just change the name of the joint venture? And because the county magistrate behind may be greedy for money and embezzle the joint venture, I should guard against such things and keep a hand. Am I right?" Very accurate. County magistrate, if the county I encountered when I entered the world was the county under your jurisdiction, it should not be worse than the one in Kingshan. You are a good official, so I don't have to hide anything. Heking will not stop here in the future. Heking's coal is very important, very important. In the future, it will definitely be managed by the court, and the local governments will follow suit. But the court is in charge of the big head, and there will always be a small head in the people. In addition, money moves people's hearts, not to mention the money of millions or tens of millions of taels of silver. There will definitely be people in the people and the government who will profit from it. I don't know what will happen specifically, but the county magistrate has taken root here, and is familiar with everything in the local area. It shouldn't be difficult to deduce it, right? You can calculate its value based on the consumption of coal in the future will be tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of times the current amount, and then deduce all possible things based on this, and arrange the local coal joint venture in advance. Local government offices should intervene, but not too much. Tens of thousands of times or hundreds of thousands of times? Chen Wu frowned. It was true that he was familiar with all the local conditions and was proficient in general affairs, but as an ancient man, he could not calculate economic accounts. He also had a vague understanding of the various collusion between officials and businessmen driven by supply and demand in the rent-seeking of power driven by interests. Not only coal. Also, think about it, if the demand for coal soars tens of thousands of times or hundreds of thousands of times, what will it look like here? How many merchant ships will be added? How many more roads will be built? How many miners will come to make a living? How to provide these people with food, clothing, housing and transportation? Will your majesty send troops to station there? Will you maintain public order? Will you provide education for their children? County magistrate, it's all money here. Li Ju felt that Chen Wu was a smart man and might not be able to figure out the rules by himself. At the moment, Li Ju did not have time to teach Chen Wu a lesson systematically. He was able to tell him in advance that the coal market was about to explode, which was an accident. According to Li Ju's habit, he would rather give advice to His Majesty the Emperor to directly control the coal mines in Heking. If there is still a person in the world who can not care about how much money he makes from the coal mine, but can consider the people's livelihood and the national treasury in an all-round way, then this person must be His Majesty the Emperor. Because His Majesty the Emperor knows very well that the world belongs to him, the population, land, and money are all his wealth, and how much money he has is just a matter of where to put it. He has no motivation to plunder the people, let alone to fatten corrupt officials and profiteers. But only this emperor understands this, and it is hard to say whether the future emperor can understand it. Chen Wu was attracted by Li Ju's description. His mind flashed with the bustling market, the swarming crowds, the crowded residential areas, and the endless fleets on the river. He seemed to have grasped some connection, but he couldn't figure it out for a while. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. we cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 459, Return to the South 7. It was already late, and Li Ju still had to confirm with the princess where the banquet would be held tomorrow, so he indicated that it was almost over. Chen Wu had been taught new knowledge for a day, and he needed time to digest it. He took the opportunity to say hello to the princess, and then pick up his wife and leave. It was not polite or proper for an ordinary county magistrate to ask to see the princess, but Li Ju had a good chat with him today, and there was a banquet tomorrow, so the etiquette and rules were nothing. Moreover, the princess had already asked his wife to meet her, so it was reasonable for him to meet her in person. Chen Guiyang had recovered a little at this time. After all, he was young and had good physical fitness. After getting off the boat, he took a nap and took a bowl of medicine, and his spirits were almost good. Chen Wu's wife was a very conservative and traditional woman, which was reflected in her maintenance of authority and the focus of her life. The topic between her and the princess always revolved around the inner house, and she knew almost nothing about what was happening outside. With my shallow knowledge, it is not appropriate to disturb the adult's official business. But she was an expert in the inner house, from the days of worshipping the water jar goddess to handling minor frictions between servants. Speaking of which, the Yu Yaoniang goddess of Mount Te is the most effective. Before you took office, we went to Mount Te to worship the goddess. These years have been smooth sailing, and my belly has suddenly become strong. I gave birth to 3 white and fat boys in a row. Together with the first one, the 4 children are as strong as calves. My life is complete. The wife of the Chen family is white and fat, with kind eyes, and her hair and jewelry are meticulously worn. At first glance, she looks like a lady from the outer court, who conforms to the aesthetics of Dayang. At least Chen Guiyang felt relieved when she saw it, but it was a little boring. She couldn't imagine that the only topics between her and Li Ju were jewelry, clothes, giving birth to sons, raising sons, and socializing with other noble ladies. No matter in the past or now, Chen Guiyang and Li Ju can always find a lot of topics to talk about, which may be science, literature, martial arts, or people's livelihood and economy. What to wear and what to eat will occasionally be mentioned, but it is only mentioned more on the wedding day. Later, Chen Guiyang took care of Li Ju's clothes, and Li Ju didn't notice any changes in his wardrobe. The two would only mention this topic when buying new clothes, and they would never think about such trivial things at other times. But, Empress Yu Yaoniang, is it really so effective? Chen Guiyang couldn't help asking. Mrs. Chen was beaming. Of course not. The Empress is in charge of giving birth to children. As long as you are sincere and accumulate good deeds, you will definitely get what you ask for. Let me say something abrupt. I have an embroidered statue of Guanyin from Mount Te, which is small and delicate. It's okay to carry it with you every day. If the princess doesn't mind, I'm willing to give it to the princess. A gentleman does not take away what others like. Chen Guiyang was really moved, but she held back. Mrs. Chen said, "Hey, what's the big deal? I got this from a lady on Mount Te. That lady also gave birth to 4 sons. She went to fulfill her wish that day, and this embroidered statue was to be given to other believers who prayed for children according to their local customs. Now I'm over 40, and I don't want to have children anymore, so it's just right to give it to others. It's rare that the princess is interested, isn't it just right? Isn't the most difficult thing in the world the word just right?" Chen Guiyang then shyly accepted the sachet with the embroidered statue, and hung it on himself immediately. Ziking, who witnessed everything, said, "Princess, who are you? Weren't you angry about the 100 children painting that the Yang family in Jiangnan presented as tribute 4 years ago? Why are you taking the initiative to pray for a child today?" Mrs. Chen happily shared her experience in praying for a child, such as bathing in the moonlight on the full moon night, praying on the night of the Kixi festival, how to eat, what are the requirements for sitting and lying, etc. Chen Guiyang actually listened with relish. It was not until the messenger girl came to say that County Magistrate Chen was going to see the princess that Chen Guiyang and the county magistrate's wife's private conversation ended with a sense of unfulfilled desire. The county magistrate greeted the princess through the screen and then led his wife away. Li Ju sent them off, then went back to his room, changed into a comfortable Yanju dress, and went to find Chen Guiyang. Chen Guiyang was fiddling with the 2 clay figurines that Li Ju brought her. Her face was pink, and she looked so pretty. Li Ju was stunned at the door, and it was Chen Guiyang who called him over, so he sat down next to Chen Guiyang with a little embarrassment, asking her if she was feeling better, and then asking about the doctor, taking medicine, etc. It was already time for dinner. Chen Guiyang dealt with him first, and then asked where the meal was set up. Li Ju said it was up to him, so Chen Guiyang took Li Ju to the living room outside to eat. The dinner was all sour and spicy appetizers, and the spiciness was provided by pepper and ginger. Li Ju brought chili peppers, but they were not fully popularized. At present, the main sources of spiciness are still ginger, garlic, leeks, pepper, horseradish, and dogwood. The spicy taste was enough to whet one's appetite, and Li Ju could finish 2 bowls of rice with the soup. Chen Yang had drunk a bowl of medicine and eaten some cakes before, so he was not too hungry at this time. He moved his chopsticks twice and stopped, concentrating on picking dishes for Li Ju. Li Ju finished a bowl of rice and then had another one before eating slowly. He chatted with Chen Guiyang while eating. I think the wedding banquet tomorrow should be held in the village in the west. The people there have good customs. Today I met a little girl who is as lively as I was when I was a child, as brave as a monkey. I'll listen to you. You've seen a lot, so you make the decision. Chen Guiyang's maid had already told her about Li Ju leading a horse with a little girl to the outskirts of the city. She said, the little girl you are talking about is the one who is your guide today. She is really brave. How can an ordinary girl who has never ridden a horse ride like your tall horse for the first time and be so proud of it? Yes, after following her around, I found that their village is indeed the most peaceful. I think it's suitable. And it can also help Chen Wu. Mr. Chen. I have never seen him in person, but looking at his wife, although she is pedantic, she has a good heart and is upright. She can be said to be a model of a good wife. From this point of view, the magistrate himself should be a good person, and it would be nice if I could help him. Well, when I was planning the route home this time, I heard that Mr. Chen is very pragmatic, and he is both benevolent and skillful in governing a place. It turns out that he is not bad. After talking about it in detail today, then, where should we hold the banquet, and how can we help him? Li Ju thought about it, and decided not to hide the matter of Duncan. He told her everything. At the end, he sighed and said, if we set up a banquet in the west, we will need at least 50 tables. Each table will have chicken, duck, fish and meat, which will cost at least 45 taels of silver. Here, it will cost more than 200 taels. There are vegetables and meat on the table, and the rice we eat is good, which is better than what ordinary farmers eat during the new year. This is a statement. I will spread the word that I don't like the trend of killing babies in Duncan, and I think they are not good people. In the future, when County Magistrate Chen wants to change the local customs, he will encounter less resistance. Those who were originally neutral and wavering will always have a good tendency when they think of this banquet today. When Chen Guiyang heard that he had also given a baby a body, he subconsciously touched the embroidered portrait given by County Magistrate Chen's wife and said, I see. This fate is really unfair. Some people try every means to do good deeds and accumulate virtue, but they just want a child, but can't wait for a long time. Some people easily get such a good daughter, but they have to kill her. It's really unfair. The fate of having children is predestined by heaven. If there is, there will be. If there is not, there will be no. Don't force it. Forcing it will only hurt your heart. Brother, that's easy to say. What if we never have one? You also say don't force it? Isn't that better? Giving birth to a child is so dangerous. Even with the help of Li Yuan's female doctors, there is still a 20 to 30% chance of bad results. I don't want you to take risks. I don't want you to experience even a 20 to 30% risk. Even if you are not afraid of life and death, I'm still afraid that I will worry about you. It's enough for the two of us to live in peace for a long time. Li Ju originally wanted to say that his family didn't have a throne to inherit, let alone a family line to pass on, but when he thought it was a bit treasonous, he didn't say it. Chen Guiyang instead felt that she wanted a silly son like Li Ju even more. What if I just want a child? Well, I have an adopted daughter who is so well behaved and cute. When I think of her, I feel that I can't love her enough in this life. This may be the fate of father and daughter. Why don't you adopt one you like? There are so many children in the world that are suitable for you. Why do you have to give birth to one yourself? Chen Guiyang was a little angry for a moment. She was angry that Li Ju, a wooden man, didn't understand what she meant at all. But when she heard Li Ju's every word, which was all about wishing her good health, longevity and safety, she had to be accompanied by 99 points of joy. Chapter 460 Return to the South 8. Chen Guiyang had no objection to Li Ju's choice, so Li Ju asked Chu Sanshiba to go to Zhangganbao on the 38th day of the first lunar month and tell the people in Zhangganbao to confirm the banquet tomorrow. He also brought a few cooks and helpers to prepare for the banquet early tomorrow morning. The people in Zhangganbao and Zinayazi village were so happy that they couldn't sleep well all night, and they were busy before dawn the next day. The people sent by Li Ju were not idle either. They not only had to prepare food materials with the local villagers, but also had to spread the news that Li Ju Chen Guiyang was inviting people to the banquet. Li Ju also sent an invitation to Chen Wu and mentioned that if there were people accompanying him, they could also be invited to the banquet. So on this day, including the people from the two villages and Chuncheng Ferry, there were a total of 600 or 700 people rushing to the banquet, and the scene was extremely prosperous. Early in the morning, the two villages that mainly hosted the wedding banquet began to kill chickens and sheep, chop wood and boil water. As promised, the butcher delivered 100 kilograms of pork, including the good meat from 2 pigs, as well as a lot of offal and pig's trotters. Li Ju had said in advance that he didn't want any, so he asked the villagers who helped him to take some home to eat. The pig blood was coagulated and sliced and stewed with the pork, which was an excellent farmer's pig killing dish. Some of the meat was stir-fried. The chickens and ducks were treated in the same way. The meat was cut into pieces and steamed with ginger, garlic, etc., or stir-fried over high heat, and a white-cut chicken and a yellow wine duck were obtained. The mutton was braised in red, and each table had only a small pot of dog meat. In Dayang, except for Li Ju who raised dogs to please himself, or the wealthy families who raised dogs as pets, most other farmers and hunters raised dogs for food. It was not until the meat value of dogs gradually decreased and the value of pets gradually increased that it slowly became a less popular source of meat. Li Ju himself liked dogs very much. The dog in Qingshan City was already very old, and he also brought it to Jinling. However, Li Ju did not think there was anything wrong with other people raising dogs just for food. They were not his beloved pet dogs and guard dogs. The big fish was braised, and the small fish was made into a stew. The salted eggs were simply sliced, and the fresh eggs were made into omelets and toppings. The fat meat left over from frying, some scraps and corners, and some tendons were all fried with various vegetables and dried vegetables to make a fragrant stir fry. Even if the chef Li Ju sent was not as good as Shibalang, who was a natural chef, he was at least proficient in frying, stir frying, boiling and deep frying, and was willing to use oil and sauce, so several dishes were very delicious. 50 tables were set up, and there were several spare tables ready for people who could not sit down. Each table was made up of several tables of different quality and even height, and could seat 12 or 13 people. If it was a table for female relatives, 15 or 16 people could be squeezed in. Li Ju also bought 60 bottles of wine with a low alcohol content from a merchant in the city, and matched each table with a bottle to liven up the atmosphere. Finally, 5 or 6 large bowls were placed on each table, with large dishes in them. Since the bowls were collected from each household, they were of different sizes and shapes, and most of them had gaps and cracks. Other small stir-fries and cold dishes were casually placed in various pots, pans, and even large tree leaves. There were more than 10 on each table, which looked colorful and rich at first glance. The residents of the two villages and nearby areas, except for those whose ancestors had been rich, had never seen or heard of such a banquet before, and they were busy all day long, swallowing their saliva desperately. They were even willing to starve for several days in advance for this meal, including washing, picking, and picking. It took most of the day to put all the dishes on the table. It was already very late, with only some afterglow from the setting sun for lighting. People brought oil lamps from their homes, and the dim and smoky light shone on everyone's face. Pearl has been excited since last night, and she has not fallen asleep all day and all night. She proudly believes that half of the credit for Li Ju setting such a good banquet here should be attributed to her. The fact is true. After returning empty-handed many times, she still took the initiative to ask Li Ju if he needed a guide, and took Li Ju directly to the village in the west. Li Ju was a person who didn't like to be tossed around. Seeing that the west was better than the east and the people were not bad, he decided to go to the west directly. If the people who took Li Ju away at that time were from the south or even Hecking, the story would be different. Zenzu's fellow villagers thought so too, so the little girl Zenzu was arranged to eat at the table closest to Li Ju as an exception. The seats for this table were arranged like this. Li Ju and Chen Guiyang were at the first table. According to common sense, Chen Guiyang shouldn't be here, but because of her special status, she had enough status to attend all occasions with her husband, as long as she wanted. Chen Wu and Chen Wu's wife accompanied Li Ju and his wife. Because Chen Guiyang was here, Chen Wu's wife could also be here, and must be here. Ziking and two very important wet nurses also accompanied them to the table, as did the mute, Yu Yaoniang and Niang around Li Ju. Chen Wu also brought his own chief clerk and staff, plus the local village elders and their spouses, so the large table was crowded. It was the first time for everyone to meet a person as noble as a princess. Not counting the guests brought by Li Ju and Chen Yang, only the local guests. Chen Wu had seen the emperor from a distance during the palace examination, and was appreciated by the then university scholar at the later Kyanglin banquet. After that, when he was appointed to a local post, the only high-ranking officials he could meet were those who passed by and were received by him. None of them were as noble as Princess Chen Yang. Not to mention the others, the village elders, except for the chief clerk Gong Kao who managed the account books and government warehouses when paying taxes every year, could not even see the county magistrate. Therefore, they were all cautious and anxious, and their voices were much lower, because they were afraid of offending the princess. Unless they were named, they did not dare to speak. If they were so restrained, it would not look like a meal. Li Ju and Chen Yang discussed it, and brought the little girl Zenzu, who was already reveling with a glass of wine at the next table, over. Because Zenzu was a great contributor, she sat at the next table. The women with her were all respected local housewives and a few maids who were not so close. Since it was such a big banquet, and Li Ju and Ziking were taking care of them closely, Chen Guiyang was happy to let the other maids have fun. Zenzu was moved to the first table, and she happened to be drunk. She was already very cheerful and lively like a wild horse. When she saw Li Ju, her eyes sparkled, and she flattered him for free, which made Chen Guiyang and Yu Yaoniang laugh countless times. With Zenzu's liveliness, the atmosphere at this table gradually became lively. Chen Wu took advantage of his drunkenness to thank Li Ju for his generosity again and again. The elders in the village didn't know that Li Ju also agreed to bring a few local envoys back to Jingling. They thought that Chen Wu meant that Li Ju would treat everyone to a meal and wine to celebrate his marriage at all costs, so they all agreed. Pearl took the opportunity to ask, "Sir, you are so generous and kind, do you have any other business for us? Our village is still too poor. You see, we can't even set up 50 tables for a banquet." In the end, we had to borrow money from the city. Chapter 461 Return to the South 9. Chen Wu had already got Li Ju's idea, so he didn't dare to ask any more questions. The local elder was worried that Zenzu would piss off the nobleman. As soon as Zenzu finished speaking, the elder came out with a smile to stop him. Chen Wu didn't move at that time. First, his bullying of a little girl might have a bad impact on her future. Second, what if Li Ju really had some other ideas that he hadn't come up with? So Chen Wu looked at Li Ju with a smile. Li Ju liked Zenzu very much and was willing to do something good for the people in this area. But Chuncheng is such a place where you can see the end at a glance. There is no depth, no specialty, and nothing except the coal mines waiting to be developed. But the advantages are also obvious. That is, the climate is very suitable for aquaculture. This area is famous for the perfect rain and heat, not too humid, not too hot, few natural disasters, and convenient transportation. If it weren't for the great impact of the coal mine, it would definitely be a livable city in the future. But the soil here is not fertile enough, so the effect of planting is average. Li Ju thought for a moment and asked Chen Wu, "Are you planning to introduce a glass factory here?" Chen Wu replied, "We have plans to do so. We can use coal to make glass locally, and the cost is very low. Many craftsmen are learning from me, and several of them can make very beautiful cups. I plan to find a few people who can make porcelain and paint, and make some painted cups. Making glass cups is not a difficult task. In the past rich people also used glassware to display fruits and make tea, but it was not until Li Yuan made public the formula of glass and the method of controlling kiln temperature that large-scale production was possible. Heqing County was one of the fastest to catch up, and it had just gotten started. The information on paper had already written everything clearly, but once you started, you knew it was not the case. It is true that learning from books is shallow, and you must practice to know it thoroughly. In fact, the progress of various places that are interested in this is very limited. Chen Wu does not know the specific situation, but he knows a little about the progress. Li Ju said, "There is an industry you can do, travel vegetables and military rations." Li Ju was referring to instant food and canned food that require a lot of fuel to pile up. Instant food needs high temperature dehydration and preservation. Canned food needs high temperature disinfection and sterilization, and heating is inevitable in the production process. In addition, glass itself needs kiln temperature to burn, so it has an inherent advantage in Chuncheng. It is convenient to transport materials in and out of the finished products. There is fuel, and the agriculture itself is not too bad. The large plain that can be reached by water in 3 days to the west is rich in wheat. It can be regarded as a regional advantage. Chen Wu said, "Travel vegetables and military rations? They are all food that needs to be stored for a long time. Sir, you need to work hard here, that is, use glass to store food, but glass is so heavy, I'm afraid it is not suitable for long distance carrying. Just put more in the jar, and it will not be eaten up in one meal. It is always better than ordinary pickles and sauerkraut. This job will start with a factory in their village, not to say that this factory will only be set up in this place, but because I like this village, I'm willing to open the first one here." The elders heard it clearly and stood up one by one to toast Li Ju. Li Ju had a good alcohol tolerance. In modern times, if you don't have a certain alcohol tolerance, you can't do business with outsiders. Therefore, Li Ju's alcohol tolerance has reached perfection. He can get drunk or sober when he wants. Today, he is happy, and he drank the farmer's wine, so he won't get drunk. He took everyone's wine and repeatedly promised that he would never break the contract. Finally, he simply decided on the spot and asked them to select 2 or 3 brave and smart people under the age of 18 to follow the envoy sent by County Magistrate Chen to go to Jinling to study. Zhenzu immediately raised her hand to sign up. The folk customs in this area are relatively conservative. Jianghan Fort is already a very open-minded place. It is willing to let women do business at the ferry, but it is not open-minded enough to send a little girl to learn how to run a factory. So Zhenzu must go. She is the great contributor to the banquet. In front of outsiders, the elders don't want to embarrass her, but it is indeed inappropriate for her to go. Chen Guiyang, who had not talked about business the whole night and only chatted with the wife of County Magistrate Chen and the woman at the next table, suddenly said, "It's not a good idea for you to be so hesitant. Why don't you let me take her with you? I will also open a girls' school in Jingling. Just treat Miss Zhenzu as my first student. If you find 2 smart ones to follow the prince consort to learn, it will be alright." How glorious it is for the princess to accept a disciple. Even if the elders wanted to refuse from the perspective of etiquette, they were willing to give up the benefits of the relationship with the princess. While they were still hesitating, Zhenzu had already jumped up and bowed 3 times like Sun Wukong bowing to Bodhi on the stage of the straw troop, calling her princess master. Chen Guiyang was only helping out for Li Ju's sake, but seeing her so clever, he was a little happy and said, "Good girl, sit down and have a drink. When you come tomorrow, we'll talk about the following in detail." Li Ju thanked Chen Guiyang by clasping his fists behind his back. Chen Guiyang remained calm and whispered, "Why should we thank each other? Your business is my business. I accept you because you like this girl. I think it's the same in reverse." Li Ju smiled innocently. His wife was so considerate and humble. Fortunately, he didn't miss her. Fortunately, the emperor, empress and Sanjia helped him to get together. When he returned to Jinling and settled everything, he would thank everyone in the capital. There was not even a decent government office in the southern part of Chuncheng, and there were many boats that docked at midnight, so there was no curfew. Everyone was having fun until late at night. The night wind was cool, and the temperature difference between day and night was very large, so the village lit a bonfire for both lighting and heating. The children carried meat around the bonfire and listened to the beeping sound, which had a sense of the new year. Li Ju asked the people who were waiting eagerly to take a bowl of the leftovers away from each household. Such a bowl of good food could allow each family to eat oily and meaty food for several consecutive days. After repeatedly instructing the village elder of Zhonggan Fort to send Pearl to the post house tomorrow, Li Ju took Chen Guiyang by the hand to walk back while digesting the food. The bustle seemed to be still in my ears, but it was very quiet around. Chen Guiyang couldn't help but said, "This is the fireworks of the world. Although it is not something elegant, it is so real." Li Ju smiled and said, "Just now I saw that you were not in a good mood, and I was worried that madam would not like it. It sounds like that is not the case. I'm not uninterested because I don't like it. I didn't expect. There are virtuous officials like County Magistrate Chen here, and there are places to make money like the ferry, and it is so close to Chang'an, but the people's lives are still so difficult. Zhensu is so smart. She is 11 years old, but she looks like a 7 or 8-year-old child in Beijing. Is there anyone worse? And what about the people in Duncan who didn't survive? In this way, I naturally have no interest. However, on second thought, it's a good thing to have you. When you agreed to help them, it seemed as if I had also been helped." Chen Guiyang's experience is not little. When she was in Jinling, she traveled all over the green mountains and clear waters. What kind of farmers, fishermen, and merchants had she not seen? However, the extreme poverty of Chuncheng still made her feel uncomfortable. Li Ju said, "This is because productivity is not enough. County Magistrate Chen is a good official, but it's a pity that even a good cook cannot cook without rice. When a person can only produce 1 dan of rice, even if he racks his brains and gives subsidies, it's only 1.5 dan. But if a person can produce 10 dan of rice, or even 100 dan of rice, the situation will be completely different. I will definitely try my best to make this number bigger and higher. When everyone is well fed and warmly dressed, it will not be a waste of Kanja and I's lifelong friendship." Chapter 462 Return to the South 10. On the third day, Chen Wu came in plain clothes and brought 7 or 8 energetic young men. Zhang Ganbao and Zinayazi village also sent 3 boys and girls. One was Zhensu, the other was a widow in her 20s from Zinayazi village who had lost both her husband and her parents-in-law. There was also a boy who was Zhensu's fiancé. Li Ju asked about their responses and Chen Wu mentioned their personalities. In short, they were all honest and thoughtful young people who hoped to change the fate of their hometown. Among them, a special one was a scholar. Not long after he passed the examination, he was bribed by a robber to break his right hand because he spoke for justice. Although he practiced writing with his left hand and wrote neatly, he finally gave up the idea of continuing to take the exam. After sending the robbers and enemies who did the dirty work to jail, he returned to his hometown to live in seclusion. When Chen Wu was looking for someone to understand the pinyin and sentence reading of Qingshan, he discovered this elder brother from the hermits. Heoziake was also grateful for Chen County Magistrate's sincere concern for the local area and was willing to go out to study the miscellaneous studies that he had previously looked down upon. However, as he studied and studied, Heoziake also found that Li Yuan's things were far more than just craftsmanship, and even if they were craftsmen, they were not as humble as he had thought in the past. Up to now, Heoziake has been studying Li Yuan's miscellaneous studies and technical stack materials for 6 years. This time, the hecking government paid for them to secretly go to Jinling to learn technology. He was the team leader and was responsible for taking care of other companions, including Zhensu and the other 2. On that day, Hayaozuke finally met the long-rumored King Shenli Baxiu. Like most people in the past, his imaginary image had no similarities with Li Baxiu himself. Ziking and Yu Yaoniang helped to arrange a place for them. Hayaozuke put down his luggage and found Li Ju with Heking's notebooks and the doubts they had explored over the years and some technical workarounds. It can be said that he was thirsty for knowledge. Li Jiu was always very generous to those who took the initiative to make progress. After the ship sailed safely out of the port, he called those who were more relevant to the trip and answered questions for Hayaozuke carefully and seriously. Hayaozuke brought a lot of notebooks, which were densely packed with questions. Li Jiu even saw the first one, which was in the geography course about the Earth. If the Earth under your feet is really a sphere, why don't people on the other side fall off? Aren't they tired of being upside down? Later, another sentence was added next to this sentence. It turns out that it's because of universal gravity. Even if this question was checked off, there were still many unchecked ones, which were still circled in red. Li Jiu noticed that the questions he still had were very detailed. He imitated the greenhouse and thought of using the abundant local coal resources to keep warm, but there would still be years with reduced production and no harvest. They failed many times and only achieved slight results in a few varieties such as cucumbers. After this paragraph, the failed varieties are carefully noted, including common fruit and vegetable varieties such as watermelon, pumpkin, and loofah. There are also detailed new tables at the back to indicate temperature control, humidity, basic soil conditions, etc. Very detailed. Li Ju, holding such thick booklets, judged that Hayaozuke was at least a scientific research talent. For those questions that were easy to answer, Li Ju answered them on the spot. For those that were difficult to answer, Li Ju also admitted that even he himself did not know, but there were always smart people in Jinling, and it was common for everyone to discuss various questions together. It is true that, after learning basic knowledge to a certain extent, the next level is advanced physics and advanced chemistry, which rely on new equipment and new technologies. From books, you can only learn concepts, and you cannot form real cognition. This is the difference between geniuses and ordinary people. Geniuses can understand after reading books, but ordinary people have to spend more money to learn. The only genius Li Ju has met so far is the eldest son of the Yang family. He is good at mathematics and physics, but unfortunately he has to go home to inherit the family business. The family business of the Yang family is not easy to inherit. Yang Dalang at least needs to pass the imperial examination to convince the public. Therefore, at least before he passed the imperial examination, he had to distract himself halfway to the imperial examination. In addition to Yang Dalang, there were also some people who were very good at studying, but their talents were not as good as before. In addition, this world did not have the most basic scientific atmosphere. Once they were out of the scope of actual control, they would have difficulty understanding. The most intuitive manifestation was that they could easily understand static electricity, but it was difficult to understand magnetic fields. Li Ju never met a genius like Yang Dalang again. Xiaolian might be half a genius, but Xiaolian's strengths were all in memory, so she was very fast in mental arithmetic and her literary attainments were not lower than her husband's. However, it might be because she could not devote herself to it, so she only learned mathematics and physics to the level equivalent to high school graduation, and did not continue. Most of the others were similar to Hayaozuke. They might have average talents, but they studied hard and practiced hard, and they would not turn back, even if they hit the south wall. As the saying goes, a fool may have 1,000 thoughts, but still have one thing to gain. Even if they had no talent, they could still gain something, if they studied hard to this extent. If one person gained something, 2 people would exchange, and each would gain 2 points. When the conditions were very restrictive in the early stage, this was how science and general education was promoted. After a few days, Li Ju would wander around. After getting off the boat, if he encountered something unreasonable, he would intervene and take care of it. If he encountered something worth cooperating with, he would agree to invest in several industries according to the local situation, and take away suitable local talents to Jinling to learn skills. Gradually, more and more people in the team came to study and seek technology. In addition, there were so many craftsmen, and they also made some new and strange gadgets. Li Ju didn't know whether they were useful or not, but it was quite a training. Li Ju also gave them the drawings of the steam engine to play with. If they could make a steam engine with a combustion efficiency of more than 8, Li Ju could give them a manor. After drifting on the water for a month, the weather gradually turned cold, and it even started to snow and frost in the north. The team abandoned the boat and drove instead, and walked by land. When the weather was bad, they had to stop to avoid rain and wind. Moreover, although they traveled day and night, the animal power was a pity. They had to give cattle, horses and people time to rest, so the speed would be much slower. But there are advantages to being slow. Li Ju and Cheng Yang had been to many places before, but they rarely traveled because they were in a hurry, or because the timing was not right, or they were not interested. This time, Li Ju and Cheng Yang were in love, and there was nothing particularly important to do, so they deliberately slowed down their journey to enjoy the mountains and rivers. Since the journey was slow, they also deliberately went to some famous scenic spots near Lucheng and passed through more mountain villas, towns, and villages. The 2-month journey was delayed to 3 months, and the original plan to host 20 to 30 buffets became 50 to 60, and the team became larger and larger. When they returned to Jinling, the entire team had more than 80 people than when they set out, all of whom were new friends they met along the way, willing to come to Jinling to study, or who got along well with Li Ju, Cheng Yang and others. Chapter 463, Scholar Cui arrives in Jinling. It was another severe winter, and the new year was coming in a few days. Jinling had already started preparing. To be honest, there had been no other changes in Jinling over the years, but people's lives were getting better day by day. Since Mr. Yu took over the management of Jinling, he had basically been honest and upright, but he did not interfere in local affairs at will. He had his own way of dealing with things he did not understand. Jinling was originally a prosperous place, and it had become more prosperous in recent years thanks to Li Ju and maritime trade. During the new year, except for those who were very unlucky and had no income this year, every household could serve 1 or 2 meat dishes. Those with better conditions bought mutton and venison, and those with poor conditions also had to serve some pig offal. Li Ju and Cheng Yang sent a message back early, and the relatives and friends in Jinling knew that he would arrive in the next few days, so they bought New Year goods for his family and gave them to the women who stayed in Jinling to keep. The servants and maids who were on the vanguard arrived first, tidied up the house, took care of the yard, dealt with the various items prepared by relatives and friends, and sent from the capital, and handled the New Year's goods, which were really rich. However, they put the items in order and waited for the masters to return. Before the master came back, someone else came. It was November. Cheng Yang and Li Ju were still boating and fishing in the Chuangxia lake in the northwest of Jinling, and studying with local fishermen how to raise crabs and water chestnuts in nets. Jinling welcomed a dusty scholar. The scholar said his surname was Cui, and he came to find Fengrang Hao Li Ju, saying that his wife and baby were taken away by Li Ju, and he came to find his wife and child. Because Li Ju Cheng Yang had not returned yet, these vanguards did not know what was going on, so they had to write letters to inquire, and repeatedly shirked their responsibilities, asking him to look for him again after a while. Cui Shushan lived near the Fengrang Marquis's mansion, and he talked about his wife Yu every day. After a few days, the news spread, and it was a big deal. Everyone in Jinling knew that Li Ju was the most self-disciplined person. Cui Shushan's words were not believed by anyone, but he was often invited to drink by wine lovers, just to find out the details. Cui Shushan had a normal alcohol tolerance. After getting drunk, he talked a lot and told all the details. Everyone pieced together the story, and it was probably about a romantic affair between a courtesan and a young man. It turned out that Cui Shushan's family was very poor. It was not until Cui Shushan passed the imperial examination and was supported by the villagers that he became excited. That year, he went to Beijing to take the imperial examination. Cui Shushan frequently went to various literary events, such as preaching scriptures and reciting poems. After he passed the imperial examination, he always went there and won the first prize easily. After a long time, he inevitably became arrogant. Unexpectedly, the capital city gathered the world's top scholars, not only those who were studying this year, but also those who came to the capital city to study in advance for the exam, those who were studying in the past, and those who had no interest in the imperial examination and were only interested in studying. What talents have never been seen? What romanticism has never been seen? This Yu Yaoniang was hung up and hammered by various talents, and his mentality collapsed. He failed the imperial examination. Only then did he realize that he had underestimated the heroes of the world. He calmed down and studied seriously for a few years and participated in another imperial examination. He still failed this time and spent all the money he brought. When Yu Yaoniang thought about how high-spirited he was when he left his hometown, how eagerly the elders in his hometown looked forward to it, but he ended up in such a miserable end. How could he go back to his hometown to get money? So Yu Yaoniang gritted his teeth and found a temple in the capital to live in and earned money to study by copying scriptures and preaching scriptures. Just when he had no food and clothing, the people Yu Yaoniang had offended before came to his door. At that time, Yu Yaoniang was still a young man. When he saw a playboy robbing a singing girl on the street, he was indignant and made fun of the playboy on the spot. He used the way of cursing in the street without using dirty words to make him notorious. Later, when Yu Yaoniang was taking the imperial examination, the playboy did not dare to do anything to Yu Yaoniang. Now that Yu Yaoniang has fallen into poverty, the playboy naturally wants to get back at him. The playboy used the excuse of asking Yu Yaoniang to copy scriptures to make him stay up late in the winter until his eyes were almost blinded and his hands were frozen. He also bribed the monks in the temple and deliberately made things difficult for Yu Yaoniang. The charcoal he gave was damp and the rice he left was deliberately kept cold before Yu Yaoniang could take it. A few days later, Yu Yaoniang fell seriously ill and did not finish copying the scriptures. He could not come down for 3 or 5 days. He was thrown out of the temple and thrown into the street by the young monks in the temple who were paid to do things and colluded with the gangsters outside. Fortunately, a jinn named Leu went out to sing songs that day, and on the way back, she found Yu Yaoniang. When Yu Yaoniang first arrived in the capital, he was the lover of Leu. At that time, Leu had just been combed, young and simple, and very fair. She knew some words and poems, and was gentle and docile, completely different from the usual Jinv. Yu Yaoniang regarded her as a confidant. Later, Yu Yaoniang was short of money and had nothing to do. He really couldn't afford the expenses, so he had to stop communicating. Leu was a kind girl, so she saved Yu Yaoniang, rented a house with him, used her own money to support his studies, and occasionally went out to visit him with some exquisite food. After this incident, Yu Yaoniang no longer dared to live in a muddle-headed way. He worked hard to study and was as hard-working as before. He secretly swore in his heart that, if he had a chance to succeed in the future, he would redeem Leu. Since she has been so kind to me, I'm naturally willing to take her in and save her from the sea of suffering. Yu Yaoniang cried to his new friends in a drunken state countless times. Here, I have to explain something for Yu Yaoniang. It is not that he despises jinns and only wants to take her in instead of marrying her in a formal way. In fact, in Dayang, jinns are still of low status, and it is impossible for them to be married by good people as their principal wife. Unless a noble official redeems her and changes her family background, there is a chance that she can clear her name and become a legitimate wife. Therefore, the best help Yu Yaoniang can give to Leu is to redeem her and then either recognize her as his sister or take her in. However, Yu Yaoniang thought that a young and beautiful girl who was willing to spend money to settle him and visited him earnestly must have taken a fancy to his talent. This has been the case since ancient times and is not uncommon. Naturally, he wanted to take Leu in. Unfortunately, before he passed the imperial examination and became a successful person, Xianglao collapsed first. I didn't see her for a few days, so I went out to ask around and found out that it was Marquis Fengrang who had demolished her Jian, and she and the daughter she gave birth to me were all taken away. Yu Yaoniang now went back to his hometown. Where could he meet such a considerate, bright and charming girl? Therefore, after losing Liu, he missed Liu even more. After some inquiries, he learned that Marquis Fengrang took Liu back to Jinling, so he followed her all the way. Yu Yaoniang's story was full of twists and turns, and it was in line with people's fantasy of Hanfu running at night in the middle of the night, so it soon spread. The people of the Yu family, Huang Zifugaya, of course, didn't believe it. They knew how picky Li Ju was. Besides, Li Ju would definitely abide by his promise of no second color as a son-in-law. Even if that Jin was a national beauty, Li Ju would definitely be able to keep Qingming. And this Jin was not a national beauty, but the general public found it interesting and made up all kinds of short plays, rap lyrics, and tansy to sing. When Li Ju and Chen Yang returned to Jinling, this story was made into a 12-fold drama to be performed in March next year, and it was named Jiang Lei Saves the Hero in the Dust. When Li Ju and Chen Yang stopped at the post station, they met the people who greeted them in front of the mansion. When they told this story, Li Ju and others were very surprised, and Chen Yang and Yu Yaoniang laughed happily. Chapter 464, Visiting a Friend. The people who stayed behind trusted Li Ju more, but many of those who came from the capital had only met Li Ju a few times. They always heard people say good things about him, but they had never seen him in person, so they had doubts in their hearts. Seeing Chen Guiyang and others laughing like this, they all knew that something was wrong, and hurriedly smiled and said, "I think we believed everything we heard, and made the host laugh at us." Chen Guiyang looked at Li Ju, and Li Ju waved his hand, indicating that she could speak for herself. He was busy with the final count of the number of people and luggage, and really didn't know what to explain. Chen Guiyang Fang smiled and said, "You only know what's outside, but not what's inside. Our master has already acknowledged the Liu that the scholar mentioned as his sister, and he has no other intentions. You can all treat her as the daughter of your brother-in-law's family." How did the outside spread like this? Your brother-in-law can live with Wang, but it's as if he likes the girl's beauty. The people who came to greet him from the mansion hurriedly apologized to Li Ju. Li Ju said, "Originally, they didn't say it outside, and I can't blame them for guessing. But, if this is true, why didn't Dong Mui mention that there was a scholar CUI waiting for her?" Chen Guiyang thought about it for a while, and secretly felt that, although Li Ju was simple-minded, he was not blind. He casually said the most crucial point. She figured out the loopholes in CUI Shushan's story, and the smile on her face had faded a little. Maybe this scholar is self-indulgent. If he is really a good person, why would he go to Qinlao and Chuguan? Does he have the talent of Liu Sambian? This dynasty does prohibit officials from cheating. If a scholar has achieved fame and honor, and is self-disciplined, a true good man, or is seeking fame and reputation, a fake good man, he will not jump on the edge of breaking the law. At most, he will call an official prostitute to his home to enjoy her. So what kind of poor scholar would go to the temple to seek a sense of existence? In addition to the arrogant idiots, there are also sex-hungry ghosts. After listening to Chen Guiyang's circle, he felt that both were true. This scholar not only openly violated the tacit understanding of the clean stream in the capital, but also dared to challenge the dignity of the prince consort. Isn't this arrogance? He was alone, and had no place to stay in Jinling, but he dared to hint to the prince consort to take in a Jin on his territory. What else could he be but a fool? He was obviously short of money, and had no livelihood, but he chased all the way to Jinling. What else could he be but a sex-hungry ghost? If it was true love, it would be impossible that Dong Niang never mentioned such a person from beginning to end, and it was not clear that she was still thinking about someone in daily life. With Dong Niang's frail and frank nature, she couldn't possibly hide the fact that she had a lover. Chen Guiyang had reason to guess that Dong Niang didn't think that this CUI Shushan was a lover at all. This was consistent with Chen Guiyang's other judgments about him. However, Chen Guiyang would not say it directly, but said, "You are my and the prince consort's family. If you hear such rumors outside, you should fight back. How can you tell it to the master like a joke? You know it's because I indulged you too much in the past. Go back and reflect on it." After tightening the strings for those who were obviously slack, everyone rested for a while and continued to go to the city. Going a little further, they met Fu Gaya, who had been waiting here early. Fu Gaya was also with Huang Zhi and the two brothers of the Yu family. After not seeing each other for a year, the group of old friends felt a little strange. Chen Guiyang had a lot of contacts with them when he was in Jingling. Today, he was dressed in men's clothes for going out, so he didn't avoid them. He and Li Ju held hands and went to meet the guests openly. When they left, they were still friends, and when they returned, they were husband and wife. Even though Yu Fu, Yujin, Huang Zhi, and Fu Ge respected the princess very much, they couldn't help but make a few jokes once the atmosphere eased. Fu Ge simply changed her address to master's wife and openly asked for the privilege. My wife and I will settle in Beijing after the new year. I will take exams while taking care of master and master's wife. I'm unfamiliar with Beijing, and although I have the affection of my brother-in-law and father-in-law from the Yu family, I'm still out of reach. It happened that master's wife is here. Master's wife knows everyone in Beijing, so she must protect me. Chen Guiyang was blushing at first, but after hearing a few more words, he got used to it and said jokingly, "Good disciple, everything is fine with you, but if you get into trouble one day, don't mention your master's wife's name." This sentence came from the famous scene in Journey to the West, copied by Li Ju. Li Ju laughed when he heard it and said, "Don't listen to your master's wife. You only need to mention her name when you get into trouble. Your master's wife's name is more useful. But don't mention your master. Your master almost died of illness in Beijing this time because he was condemned by thousands of people." The two people from the Yu family and Huang Zhi all knew what was going on. Yu Fu was more mature, while Yujin was more conservative. They were both good friends of Li Ju and felt that Li Ju was a heretic. Therefore, out of their nature as honest friends, they still advised him, Bo Xiu is young and impetuous, and it is inevitable that he will offend people. Even if he is against the disciples of those old masters, you should at least give them some face, so that you can meet them in the future. Li Ju readily agreed, and did not take it to heart. Huang Zhi had been led to be as rebellious as Li Ju in the past 2 years. When he was preparing for the imperial examination, he traveled around the capital and Guangdong areas. He was very dissatisfied with the rich and powerful who only cared about eating, drinking and having fun, and exploiting the people. As soon as the world was established, the people's lives were better not because the world was better, but purely because too many people died in the war at the end of the previous dynasty, and there were fewer people left. Everyone had more land and livestock, so wouldn't they be able to make more money? Fortunately, the emperors today are kind to the people and are not extravagant and greedy. The people are less oppressed and can breathe easier. Huang Zhi could not figure out the reason for this at first, but after several years of discussion with Li Ju, he finally understood. He was the one who unconditionally supported Li Ju, even though their opponents were the righteous represented by Zheng, Qin, Wu and Yang. Huang Zhi didn't want to embarrass the Yu brothers in public because of the principle of being a good person, so he just changed the subject. "Let's not just stand here, let's go back to the city. Bo Xiu, you should rest quickly, and then we will go to see the old husband together." Li Ju heard him say this seriously and saw that the Yu brothers were trying to force a smile, so he asked, "Old Master Yu, what's wrong?" Yu Fu sighed and said, "He is old, and his spirit has been getting worse these days. But he has no pain or illness. When he is energetic, he can eat a big plate of meat and drink a big pot of wine. His appetite is still good." Having said that, the subtext is still that old Master Yu may not survive this winter. Li Ju was shocked and hurriedly got on the horse with Chen Yang. A group of people, accompanied by servants and guards, hurried into the city. At this point, none of the Yu brothers, Huang Zhi and Fu Ge mentioned the matter of Cui Shusheng. Chen Guiyang suddenly realized this and envied Li Ju's ability to make friends. They were all very good friends, at least better than those gossiping ones. Li Ju, Chen Guiyang and the mute youngest mother Ziking hurried back to the mansion, washed up, changed clothes and went to the Yu family not far away. Coincidentally, Zen Master Luang was also here that day, and with him was a Taoist named Beisu. The monk, the Taoist and old Master Yu just happened to be a combination of Confucianism, Buddhism, and Taoism, and they exchanged witty words with some scriptures. When Li Ju and Chen Yang arrived, old Master Yu finally perked up. He took a look at the couple with his reading glasses and said with great satisfaction, "It is a match made in heaven." In the past, when I looked at old Li, I wondered where he would find a soulmate, and I was afraid that he would be single for the rest of his life. When I looked at your highness, it was unavoidable that it was a pity and a hate that a beautiful woman was cut down by an ordinary man. Who would have thought that Yuleo would do this and bring you two together? It is a marriage made in heaven. Even though you are separated by thousands of miles of mountains and rivers, and by the Milky Way, you will always be able to be tied to this red thread. I'm arrogant, and as the elder of your highness and old Li, I can only say that I'm relieved. It is a cause for celebration. Chapter 465 Xiaolian. Seriously speaking, Yunnan was the matchmaker between Li Ju and Cheng Yang. 4 or 5 years ago, the emperor and the empress were troubled by Cheng Yang's unhappy marriage, and it was Yunnan who helped Li Ju. At that time, no one thought that Li Ju would be so stubborn and biased to make the princess and her husband divorce. In short, only after their divorce did the princess go south to Nanjing, and only then did they get to know each other and get married. Yunnan helped Li Ju in a lot of ways, both overtly and covertly. If he hadn't secretly guaranteed it, how could Zheng Shidao and his group of great scholars let Li Ju go easily? Especially Yu's son-in-law Yang Dalang and Yang Dalang's father Yang Jingwei. They also spent a lot of favors on Li Ju. Otherwise, no matter how Li Ju won the emperor's favor, an old fox like Wu Yu, who controlled so much power, would make Li Ju's life difficult with just a hint. Li Ju bowed to Yunnan earnestly and said, "Thanks to you, I accepted and grasped this relationship. Thanks to my husband's protection all these years, I'm now free and easy and rich. I can't repay my husband's kindness, so I can only make a wish to him here. As long as the Yu family is still a Yu family now, I will definitely be a close friend of the Yu family. I'm insignificant and may not be able to help much, but I still have some strength in the family business passed down by my ancestors." Yunnan smiled and said, "Little friend, you are too modest. The treatment of your superclass duke is much better than mine, let alone others. When our generation is gone, won't the next generation be your world? My grandchildren are all stupid. Together, they are not as smart as the third son's wife, not to mention your clever apprentice. With the two of them, I can rest in peace. And they were both brought by you. Now I'm just waiting for you to bring some virtuous wives and ideal husbands to my other grandchildren." Yunnan actually wanted to say that Li Ju was very dangerous before, but after marrying Princess Cheng Yang, his life and property were no longer a concern. However, if he wanted anything else, he had to consider what would happen next. However, it was not easy to say this in front of Cheng Yang. He could only look at the gentle and silent eldest princess with a smile and said, "Baxiu's personality is honest, straightforward, foolish and reckless. He will do what he wants to do, even if there is a cliff in front of him, and he will jump off. Your highness is the reins that tie him up. With my fading body, I pray that the princess will be more tolerant of him, and I also wish your highness and the prince consort will live together forever." Cheng Yang glanced at Li Ju and replied, "The prince consort is neither stupid nor reckless. He is a very good person. Even if he betrays me, I will not betray him. The prince consort has treated me as a friend for 3 years and a husband for 3 months, which is enough to comfort me for everything I have in my life, and is worth giving me everything I have in return." Li Ju wanted to jump up and swear to the sky after hearing this. Cheng Yang turned her head slightly and curled the corners of her lips with a smile. "What the sir has given me is worth everything I have to repay. Besides, the sir will not let me down, right?" Li Ju held her hand tightly. Indeed, what Cheng Yang thought was Cheng Yang's business. He would not let Cheng Yang down, so naturally there would be no such assumption. However, Li Ju was very happy and proud of his wife's statement. Yunnan saw that Cheng Yang's words did not seem to be reluctant, at least they were very true, and the last stone in his heart fell to the ground. Yunnan was not in a very good spirit, and he felt tired after letting go of the things he was thinking about. Li Ju and Cheng Yang took the initiative to leave. When they saw this, the two left the upper room and discussed the condition of old husband Yu with Yu Fu and his brother with great concern. It is true that people of this age will gradually age, even if they are not sick or have no disasters, and even if they are powerful, they cannot help. After sighing for a few days, Yu Fu took the initiative to ask, "My mother-in-law has her own destiny. I don't understand the details. I vaguely heard that the emperor has granted her a marriage. At this time, the news was not very smooth. The latest letter sent back by Sanjiu only said that the queen might arrange her marriage, and there was no other news. When His Majesty the Emperor arranged for Sanjiu to marry, he used the name Yu Yaoniang, the sister of Marquis Fengrang. Even her name was not revealed, not to mention that she had changed her name. The information available to ordinary people was very limited, and it was difficult to guess the details. Yu Fu and Yu Jin were old hands, and vaguely guessed that there was some connection between Sanjiu's marriage and Li Ju's sister being married to the third prince as the principal wife, because they all knew that Li Ju had no sister at all, and Sanjiu's letter was vague and seemed a bit strange. So the two old hands couldn't help but think of something. Li Ju sighed. It's a long story here. Is Liana here? I wonder if it's convenient for me and the princess to meet Liana. I have to deliver the letter written by her mother to her. If she has any questions, I can stay to answer them. After talking to Liana, I will come out and explain the reason in detail to Brother Zun. Brother Yu Fu agreed and hurriedly asked someone to decorate a flower hall and invited Yu Sanlang and Xiaolian to come. The Yu family had not yet split up, so Sanlang Xiaolian lived with his parents in the west wing of the same compound, with a total of 7 rooms, including the porch and the side rooms. Sanlang's study was in the same room as his father's, both in the south-facing flower houses north of the small garden in the north. Including the nurses and maids, as well as the cleaning and rough work, there were 8 people serving, so the population was simple and not difficult to manage. Fortunately, although Xiaolian was young, she acted generously and relaxed, and although her face was tender, she had a strong aura, and she looked like an ideal housewife. The Yu Fu couple observed her for several years, and after she entered the house, they watched her for several months. Seeing that she was able to act appropriately and was smart and capable, they gradually handed over all the economic and industrial affairs of the family to Xiaolian. After a few months, Xiaolian managed the industries in various places like an iron bucket, and the income increased by more than 10 times. Although the subordinates were not as free as before, the annual salary and bonus could more than cover the past 10 years, so everyone was convinced. Yu Fu and his wife are now lying flatter than salted fish. Every day, they either drink and play cards, or appreciate flowers, and listen to operas. They don't care about the things below. Some villains may say that the new daughter-in-law is very capable. I'm afraid that she will kill other housekeepers after she gets the key to the warehouse. At that time, the people she uses and relies on are not confidants, but what can she do? Mrs. Yu Fu thought for a while and said, as long as the warehouse is increasing, I will be too lazy to care about other things. The few maids around me, the caring ones have been sent out to get married, and the rest, as long as they do their job well, it doesn't matter who does it. Anyway, my dowry has been distributed to each room. Speaking of this, Mrs. Yu still felt that those old people who had been with her for many years were useless. They actually took 60% to 70% of the money for themselves. She thought that 30% was the maximum, so she had always turned a blind eye. Unexpectedly, she was the one who took 30%. As a result, Xiaolian's autonomy was almost the same as that of the second wife. The second wife often asked Xiaolian to help out. If Xiaolian's house was not destined to be divided, the entire Yu family might have fallen into her hands in the future. In short, Xiaolian now has a high status in the Yu family. Everyone is envious of Yu Sanlang, who studies hard, for marrying such a capable wife. Yu Sanlang himself is also very proud. When he heard that it was Mr. Li who wanted to pass on a message to his wife, he came out to entertain the guest without saying a word. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 466 Mother and Daughter. In terms of age, Yu Sanlang and Xiaolian are only about 15 or 16, which would be high school students today, so they haven't shared a room yet. Although they are both dressed like married men and women, they are still full of childishness. The intimacy between the two is still the innocence of childhood. If you think about it carefully, it is indeed the age of early love, but the growth rhythm in ancient times has turned the woman into the second in command of the family group enterprise, and the man into the successor, who is studying hard to become the pillar of the family. Yu Yaoniang is still the same Yu Yaoniang, because she is still in the age of growth. She has grown a lot taller in a year, and now she looks almost the same as Sanjiu. Since Yu Yaoniang came to Leon, she has kept up with nutrition and exercise, and she is indeed like a wheat seedling at the turn of spring and summer. She is green, tall and beautiful. Li Ju couldn't help feeling the vicissitudes of life when he took in Sanjiu and her daughter. When he took in Sanjiu and her daughter, Yu Yaoniang was just a little girl, and she was a timid little girl. Now she is a straightforward person. The couple politely greeted Li Ju Yaoniang, addressing him as Your Highness, Marquis. After Yaoniang asked them to change their address as a matter of routine, they changed it to uncle, aunt. Yaoniang took a sip of his tea and said with a smile, this change of address is not good enough. You don't know from a distance that our master has already recognized your mother as his sister, which means that he has adopted a daughter on behalf of the old master and the old lady. In addition to your mother, our youngest mother has also been adopted as the third sister. In my opinion, you should call us uncle and aunt, and call your youngest mother aunt, so that it is thorough. Although our master and your master call each other brothers, they are not real brothers after all. Li Ju nodded and responded. Yaoniang's diplomatic skills were absolutely perfect, saving him from racking his brains for words. Yu Yaoniang was surprised and happy, and Sanlang was also overjoyed. The two of them hurriedly bowed again, and changed their addresses to uncle, aunt, etc. Li Ju took out the letter Sanjiu had given him from the bag in Yaoniang's hand, and put it in with Yu Yaoniang. Your mother is indeed favored by the emperor. She has been granted marriage to the third prince as his principal wife. The ceremony will be held next winter. After the imperial decree granting marriage was issued, your mother was left in the Pepper Palace by the empress. I saw that she was inconvenienced and had not had time to say many things. She just told me a few important things. First, you and Sanlang will be arranged to go to Beijing next autumn. At least your mother will be married to the prince's mansion. As for whether there will be other arrangements, I don't know. Second, your mother reminded me that everything is fine with her there. She is only worried that someone will make things difficult for you about her remarriage. She asked you to be more tolerant and not to quarrel with the villain. Just secretly note the person and she will take care of it. I haven't read your mother's letter. You can take it and read it yourself. If there is anything you need me to do, just send someone to the Fengrang Marquis's mansion. Strictly speaking, not many people know that Li Zai is Sanjiu. Even if they know, they dare not speak out against the dignity of the royal family. At most, they would say something behind her back. Besides, there is also Yaoniang who is also remarried here. Even if someone talks nonsense about being faithful to one person, they dare not talk about it in front of Yaoniang. There is also a remarried empress in the palace. Seeing that her son, the third prince, has at least a 1 in 4 chance of becoming the crown prince, who dares to mention this at this stage? The second thing is just to prevent any eventuality, and the first thing should be carefully calculated. Sanlang and Yu Yaoniang are still young, and there are only so many people they can use. In addition, since old Master Yu is not in good health, they have to make plans as soon as possible if they want to go out next year. Yu Yaoniang wrote down the two things, took the thick letter, and did not avoid Sanlang. She opened it and read it in the bright sunlight under the bright window. There were thousands of words in the letter, but they could not express Sanjiu's thoughts and concerns for Yu Yaoniang. In addition to simply explaining that she had been recognized as Li Ju's sister and asked Yu Yaoniang to serve her father as her elders, there were so many words in the 10 pages of paper, asking whether her husband and mother-in-law were kind, and whether her food, medicine, and clothes were complete. She asked layer by layer in a dense and detailed manner, and only briefly explained a few things on the last page. The first two were the verbal messages brought back by Li Ju, but the letter was written in more detail, even arranging who to find to escort along the way, and where to stop. There were also a few things about her family, which were the handling of the Jinling property. Sanjiu had purchased a lot of property in Jinling before. In addition to the dowry for Yu Yaoniang, there were still some left for Sanjiu to use for herself. Sanjiu asked Yu Yaoniang to sell some of them and bring them to Beijing at a discount. The remaining houses and shops were given to Yu Yaoniang to keep. If Yu Yaoniang wanted to buy property in Beijing, she could sell these and make other plans in Beijing. There were also some advices on how to be a wife and a woman, such as being filial to parents-in-law, taking care of uncle, and respecting husband. In particular, it also pointed out how to deal with conflicts between the rules of her husband's family and what she learned in her daily life. It could almost be compiled into a textbook like Model Wife. Yu Yaoniang finished reading, smiled, turned her back, and wiped her cheeks gently, then smiled again. In my mother's heart, I will never grow up. I really want to tell my mother right now that everything is fine here. The master, the mistress, the old master, and my husband are all very good. I'm more worried about my mother. I often hear that the rules in the palace are very strict. I wonder how my mother is doing. Li Ju looked at Chen Guiyang, and Chen Guiyang replied, if you are worried, just write a letter to your mother and ask her in detail. You can bring the letter to me, and I will teach you how to send it. But don't worry, in my opinion, your mother is very smart and is deeply loved by the queen. However, some rules are different from those of the people. She has already changed them, so there is nothing to adapt to. When I came to Jinling, there were also some differences in the climate and human relations between the two places, and I had to change them one by one. It was your mother who tried every means to make me feel more comfortable. Her thoughtfulness and consideration are unforgettable. Your Majesty and the Queen are very grateful. Yu Yaoniang showed a proud smile and asked, should we explain this matter in detail to our master and mistress? Sanlang also agreed, this matter is of great importance. I'm afraid that one more thing will only make things worse. We are young and don't know the pros and cons. Please ask uncle and aunt for advice. Li Ju said, let's explain it to the master. Such a big thing can't be kept secret. You and your wife have to go to the capital, so you have to prepare in advance. Besides, your master and mistress may not know, but the old man must know. He is pretending to be deaf and dumb, and you can't be careless. Moreover, Yu Yaoniang, your mother's marriage this time can be said to affect Jinling. There are so many eyes watching. Tell everyone as soon as possible, so that they can prepare early and be prepared for any eventuality. Yu Yaoniang didn't want to hide it from her elders. Hearing what she said was just what she wanted. She hurriedly replied, I'll remember it. After finishing the business here, Li Jufang smiled and said, I wanted to ask how you and your wife are doing, but now it seems unnecessary to ask. Lina has grown taller, she has become rounder and looks better. Sanlang also looks stronger and is a spirited young man. I believe you are doing very well, so I won't be annoying. In a few years, you can give me a nephew or something. Nephew, right? Oh, I don't understand. Anyway, I will have something else to congratulate you by then. Sanlang replied stupidly. Lina and I still have many years to live together, but uncle and aunt's good news is coming soon, right? Chen Guiyang was silent, and Li Ju smiled. I have been cultivating myself and cultivating my character over the years, so I will just go with the flow as to whether I'm happy or not. Speaking of this, I already have the young lady of the Huang family, and I have Fugia who I treat as my own son. Now that Lina's mother calls me brother, Lina is naturally my daughter, and you are also my half-son. I'm very satisfied and don't have any other thoughts. Those who know would say that uncle loves Aunt dearly and doesn't want her to go through the burden of raising a child. Those who don't would really think that you are not feeling well. In the future, I will try my best to make up for you with all kinds of delicacies. Yu Yaoniang changed the subject and posture, taking the opportunity to kick Yu Sanlang hard. Yu Sanlang didn't know what he said wrong, but he just shrank back obediently. Chapter 467, Neighbor. Since Li Ju had brought the message in the letter, and seeing that Sanlang and Yu Yaoniang were living happily together, he had no worries in his heart. After having a private meal at Yu's house, it was still bright when Li Ju and Chen Guiyang said goodbye to Yu's house and returned to Fengrang Marquis's mansion. Chen Guiyang's house had been given to Yaochen Temple for doing good deeds and accumulating virtues, and it was next door. Master Liaoyang's mind was outside the world, but his body was in the world. He did not rush to clean up the Zen room and flowers and trees, just because this place had been given to him to stay. Now every blade of grass, every tile, and every house in Yaoqian Temple still looks like Yu Yaoniang's villa. Although there were no less evening drums and morning bells, chanting scriptures, preaching, and sutra banquets every day, it was rare that they did not disturb the people. This was because they chose to preach scriptures and recite scriptures in the morning, when every household went to work, and to sing sutra banquets when every household was having dinner. Just listen to the soft Wu dialect, which is no worse than singing opera. Besides, the sutras they sang were all collections of Buddhist stories, which were very interesting. In the ancient times, when there was little entertainment, it was almost like showing a movie, so most people in the neighborhood loved to listen to them. In addition, Master Yu Yaoniang also taught nearby children to read and write for free. Jinling had a large population and many children, and they were annoying people every day. People felt that it was a great deal to be able to spend a few days studying with the Zen master. Moreover, the temple also provided tea and water. Nowadays, there is only one well for 10 or so households. Which family is not short of water? Therefore, Yaoqian Temple has been moved here for nearly a year, and its reputation is very good. Even the Ning and Sun families stationed in Fengrang Marquis's mansion think that this neighbor is good. Later, a Taoist temple moved here, which was also the same as Yaoqian Temple. The Taoist master Beisu Zenran was very kind. Everyone occasionally exchanged witty remarks, but most of the time they wanted to do good things. It was always peaceful, but the smell of incense was a bit strong, which led the locals to call this street Shenton Street. It would be best if the neighbors were honest and did not cause trouble. When Li Ju passed by, he sent a stick of incense to both sides, impartially. The house was arranged clearly, with slight additions and subtractions. Because of the festive occasions, it was decorated with lights and colorful decorations, and the colors were very eye-catching. Chen Yang had just taken a break, and then he took people to make modifications everywhere with great interest. She used to come here often, but at that time she was a guest, either in the main hall, the living room, the front yard, the backyard, or the experimental field. This was the first time that Chen Yang had cleaned up this house as a hostess. When she thought of this, even the fatigue of the journey disappeared. She even wanted to applaud herself for giving the other courtyard to Wang. If she hadn't made this decision at that time, I'm afraid Li Ju would have to live next door with her. Although the couple had the final say on where to live behind closed doors, they didn't feel as at ease as they do now. Chen Guiyang went around with Yaoniang and Wu Laonian, while Li Ju called Fu Gaya, Wu Guanjia and others to inquire about the matter of Cui Shusheng. Fu Gaya had already checked the matter thoroughly, but he didn't know the situation in the capital. Today, Li Ju and others came back, and he asked Chuzan, Shiba and others who came back from the capital. Only then did he combine the information from both sides, and had an 80% idea in his mind. He told the whole story and concluded, this man is neither good nor bad. If you say he is infatuated, it's true. He traveled thousands of miles for a girl, and ignored his future. Even a heart as strong as iron should be melted to him. If you say he is greedy for wealth, it's not bad either. Master, why didn't he have such infatuation when the fourth girl was in the capital? Fu Gaya himself was greedy for the Yu family girl, so he threw himself on her, but he felt that he was much more reliable than Cui Shusheng. At least before he launched his offensive against the Yu family girl, he didn't fall in love with other girls. After confessing his feelings to Yuai, he never changed his mind, unlike Cui Shusheng, who didn't know what was going on in his mind. Li Ju had some understanding of these little thoughts. Everyone has a dream of getting rich overnight, having a fairy or a boss fall from the sky. Not only Cui Shusheng, but also Fu Gaya and even Li Ju himself. The only difference is that he and Fu Gaya don't look too bad when eating, while Cui Shusheng seems a little too strange. After Fu Gaya finished speaking, she was curious to hear what Li Ju had to say. No one wanted to care about Cui Shusheng's own plans, but it was wrong for him to touch Li Ju. There were some weird statements that were meant to imply that the son-in-law had bad conduct, publicly recruited prostitutes, and squeezed the capital's Jian in order to occupy Jin's mother and daughter. Cui Shushan didn't say it clearly, but who would be a fool if he listened to what he said? We are all 1,000-year-old foxes. What's the point of playing strange stories from a Chinese studio? Li Ju didn't take it seriously at all and directly asked someone to call Dong Niang over. Since it is related to Dong Niang, we naturally have to listen to Dong Niang's own ideas. Although I'm Dong Niang's brother, I can't make the decision for her. Of course, if the scholar surnamed Cui is really not a good person, we have to make it clear to Dong Niang. Although Li Ju didn't like the way Cui Shushan flaunted himself all the way, after all, there was no reason to bully others just because he didn't like them, so he just had less contact with them. As for the rumors outside, there was nothing to say. Cui Shushan didn't know the situation inside, and he was a fool. It was human nature and logic to make such a plot based on random guesses. As soon as Li Ju came back, Chen Guiyang was also there, and 10 or 8 rumors should have been shattered by themselves. Few people believed them in the first place. Li Ju's reputation was not built by self-praise overnight, but was seen by the people of Jiangnan for 10 years. Apart from other things, the girls such as Qian Hong and Xin Hong and Dayan Club are still there. Qian Hong has been waiting for Li Ju for 10 years. How many poems and songs are related to the story of this infatuated woman and heartless man? The girl has not married yet. Jinling is intensively adapting and rehearsing the opening drama of the year Jiang Lei Rescue the Hero in the Dust. Although it is derived from Cui Shushan's own experience, the story itself has nothing to do with Li Ju. The play tells the story of the courtiers and Jiang Lei rescuing a poor scholar who came to Beijing to take the imperial examination at a temple fair in the capital. The two swore to never leave each other and finally had a happy reunion. The villain in the play is Master Pan, not him, Li Ju. No one in Jinling dares to write a word about Li Ju. Whoever dares to say that Li Ju is not good is afraid of being beaten to death in the street. Cui Shushan was really a trivial matter. Not to mention his future career and plans, he was far inferior to Fu Gaya and the technical station. Therefore, Li Ju did not take him seriously, but left it to Dong Niang to deal with. If Dong Niang could not make up her mind, it would be the same if she discussed it with Yu Yaoniang. There was a rule anyway, and he was responsible for the bottom line. So those who were close to Li Ju knew that he had an inexplicable dullness. If an ordinary person was hit like this, he would probably break 2 tendons in his legs. But Li Ju did not care at all. In this way, Li Ju was too lazy to pay attention, and Chen Guiyang's husband and wife followed suit, so there was no movement. Fu Gaya listened to his master, and did not pay attention here. Huang Zhi, Yu Fu and others would not entangle with the past of their friend's sister's sister. Everyone let go, but Cui Shushan was proud. Chapter 468 Explanation. Dong Niang still remembered Cui Shushan. When she first started selling herself, Cui Shushan was one of the customers who was easier to please, and he was Cui Shushan's biological father. Later, Dong Niang took Cui Shushan in to continue his studies, which was just a way for Jin to invest in poor scholars. It has existed since ancient times, and is not uncommon. However, Dong Niang's investment failed, and she happened to bloom in other places, so she happily threw away the past, and embarked on a new life. As a result, Cui Shushan chased him to Jinling, and Dong Niang herself was stunned. She didn't think she had such great charm, that a scholar who had always been arrogant would give up his future and follow her. Then Dong Niang knew about the trouble caused by Cui Shushan. When she thought that Feng Ranghao might get a reputation as a playboy because of rescuing her, Dong Niang felt infinite regret in her heart. Li Ju asked someone to bring a message that Cui Shushan now lived next to the Hao mansion, and he jumped up and down every day just to meet Dong Niang. Let Dong Niang decide how to deal with him. If they are in love, they can stay and live together. There are many opportunities in Jinling anyway. Cui Shushan is a Jiren after all. Although he probably just reaches the threshold of Jiren, he is still a Jiren, and can eat the state salary. It is not easy to find a job in the nearby county school and township school. If he has no idea, Li Ju will find someone to make it clear to him that Dong Niang is not his wife, and Cui Shushan is not in his household book. If he continues to pester Dong Niang with the excuse of Dong Niang, don't blame him for asking the government to enforce the law. With Li Ju's explanation, Dong Niang felt more confident. But she was still the cowardly and afraid girl, so she couldn't make up her mind and could only ask her sister Yaoniang for advice. Yaoniang had already had a draft in her mind when she heard the whole story. The eyesight she had trained over the years told her that Cui Shushan was not that simple, let alone that infatuated. He chased her to Jinling, and naturally he had other intentions. Yaoniang felt that Cui Shushan actually knew that Li Ju took Dong Niang in not for sex, and he might even know more, such as details like Dong Niang was her sister. Yaoniang and Dong Niang's sisterly relationship was not concealed from the outside world. If Cui Shushan was careful and had the means, it would not be easy for him to find out these things. But when Yaoniang thought of Fugaya, she felt that it was not that difficult to accept. There are too many people in the world who cling to the rich and powerful, not to mention those who have failed in the exams for a long time and are short of money. It is human nature to want to pursue a girl with a good background. The key lies in what kind of character this person has. If Fugaya is like someone who knows how to be grateful, knows how to treat the girl well, after clinging to Yu's family, knows how to give back in equal measure, after taking benefits from others, and is not annoyed when being ridiculed as a gift-giving gigolo outside, this person is not bad. Regardless of whether to marry or not, it is always okay to be friends. Thinking so, Yaoniang certainly wouldn't say that to her sister. She carefully changed the wording. Things may seem messy, but it won't be a problem if you get to the core of it. Since Cui Shushan came to find you, and you don't have the intention to renew your relationship with him for the time being, then tell him frankly that you came to Jinling to reunite with your family, and now you have found your family, and are preparing to run a small workshop to make a living. Since you are not related to him, he naturally has no excuse to continue looking for you. His suspicion of the master can also be clarified. As for what will happen to you in the future, it depends on your personal opinion. If you like each other, you can be together. If you don't like each other, then you are just a passerby. My dear sister, our future days are so long. Don't worry about nothing. Dong Niang thought about it and agreed. In fact, Yaoniang wanted to see how Cui Shushan would clarify the matter. His actions directly reflected his character. If his character is not good, and he is disrespectful to Li Ju, then get her out of Jinling as soon as possible. Dong Niang didn't know that her sister had a hidden plan. She wrote a few drafts in her mind. A few days before the big festival, she took advantage of the holiday after the distribution of New Year's goods in the mansion and quietly went out of the corner gate to find Cui Shushan to make things clear. Cui Shushan liked Dong Niang at least a little bit. Who wouldn't like a beautiful girl who was fond of him and respected him like a god? Dong Niang, who was rescued by Li Ju, now dresses up for home. She wears a few simple and clean but not shabby satin shirts and skirts every day. She doesn't wear makeup, simple jewelry, and clean makeup. She is closer to the concubine that Cui Shushan had imagined. Beautiful, gentle, simple, selfless, and regards her husband as the sky. So Cui Shushan felt that it was not a loss to follow him this time. He could take the younger sister of the official of Fengrang and the son-in-law as his wife. Then how could he miss out on the benefits in the future? Unexpectedly, Dong Niang didn't mean that at all. Dong Niang came to him, and although her tone was aggrieved and gentle, her meaning was not aggrieved at all. Now she just wanted to reunite with her family, raise Cui Shushan, build 2 businesses, and live a good life. She was very grateful that Cui Shushan was thinking about her, but at this moment, she didn't have the energy to think about other things. Cui Shushan almost couldn't help but turn hostile on the spot. He had gone through so much trouble to chase her to Jinling, and this is it? Just this? He didn't even dislike Dong Niang for being a Jinv, but this Jinv actually rejected him first. Dong Niang was first rate at observing facial expressions, and Cui Shushan was not good at acting. As soon as his mood changed, Dong Niang noticed it. Dong Niang, who was particularly good at avoiding risks, wanted to leave almost immediately. At least she remembered another matter to negotiate with Cui Shushan. The prince consort and the princess royal are deeply in love. There has never been any other thing, let alone going to Jiyuan for women. Some of the things you said before have been spread out in a bad way. Today I'm going to make it clear to you and ask you to protect me and dispel the rumors. After all, he is the prince consort. Now the prince consort is busy living with the princess royal. What should we do if he comes back to hold us accountable one day? It is better to make it clear earlier that it is just a misunderstanding and let it go. When Yu Yaoniang heard her defending Li Ju and secretly saying that he was spreading rumors and slandering Li Ju, he was so angry that his blood rushed to his head. Fortunately, he was also a coward. Although he believed that he was fair and just and Li Ju was evil and crooked, good has always been defeated by evil since ancient times, so he was not afraid of Li Ju, but he was afraid of the princess. She was the emperor's jewel in the palm of his hand and the beloved daughter of the empress. In order to make life easier for the princess, the emperor didn't even care about his face and divorced the princess and arranged for her to marry again. So he endured the shame and watched Yaoniang leave without even saying goodbye after finishing her business. Then he overturned the table in great anger and fell on the bed without changing his clothes or taking off his shoes. After a while, he got up dejectedly and was about to clean up the table he had overturned when he suddenly saw a cute little girl peeking out of the door. She had a white face, a rosy little mouth, and 2 sweet dimples. When the girl saw that he had discovered her, she didn't hide, but asked with a smile, "Hey, are you my dad?" Chapter 469, Father-Daughter Nature. The little girl who took the initiative to find the door was none other than Yu Yaoniang. She had heard that her biological father had traveled thousands of miles to Jinling, and she was already very curious. This time her mother sneaked out, and she had an idea and followed. It was simply a historic meeting. Yu Yaoniang did not have too deep feelings for the daughter he was talking about. After all, Yaoniang was a Jinv, and it was still unclear whether the daughter she gave birth to was his. It could only be inferred, based on the time, that Yaoniang only served Yu Yaoniang during that period, so it was likely that she was his. Yu Yaoniang felt that there was a small possibility that Yu Yaoniang was not his daughter, and at the same time he felt that this daughter grew up in a Jian, and he didn't know how dirty it was, so he really just used her as an excuse, not really loving or liking her. However, after seeing Yu Yaoniang, it might be blood relationship nature, or it might be attracted by the vanity of a little sweet baby calling dad to please him. Yu Yaoniang liked Yu Yaoniang, and he rolled his eyes and had a new idea. Yaoniang wanted to draw a clear line with him, and he was worried that he had no way to continue to pester her, so didn't he have a new excuse? As long as he has this little girl in his hands, why should he be afraid that Yaoniang will turn him down? Thinking of this, Yu Yaoniang was no longer angry. He changed his expression and said proudly but gently, "If you are Jiangxila's daughter, then I should be your biological father." Yu Yaoniang stepped into the door. Her smile became bigger and her dimples became deeper. "Daddy, when are you going to pick up mother? Mother works all day long there, and she has to take me to work with her. I really can't live like this." Whether it is true or not, Yu Yaoniang thinks it's okay. This daughter has a chance. He recognized it. In fact, how much work can Li Yuan assign to a little girl under 10 years old? Basically zero. The main tasks assigned by Li Ju to children under the age of 12 are just learning, recognizing words, reading, calculation, science, constitute the main duties of the children. As learning progresses and age increases, the proportion of skills will gradually increase, whether it is scientific research, textiles, breeding, medicine, or teaching. In short, everyone should gradually master 1 to 3 skills to make a living. Yaoniang herself is also studying hard. She can read, so the general education courses are relatively easy. She mainly spends energy on mathematics and science, as well as the private goods that Li Ju forced into her, a little bit of thinking about class and exploitation in the dragon slaying art. Yaoniang has always been alienated from others, because she has become a Jinv. Before others look down on her, she looks down on herself first. This is a pathological mentality, and it cannot be corrected by saying a few words to her. "It's not your fault, or it will be fine if you correct it." Li Ju is not a professional and doesn't know how to treat it. After thinking about it, he just learned the dragon slaying art. The real dragon slaying art can transform the jinv of the old society into the workers of the new era, so it should be no problem to cure unclear self-awareness, right? In addition to these courses, Dong Niang is also trying different skills to prepare for her own business in the future. She can do accounts, but not as shrewd as Xiaolian. She can also do needlework, which can make her a handmade internet celebrity in modern times, but she is only above average in Yang, and because she lacks the necessary design talent, she can only imitate, and cannot create something new. She can also draw pictures, but her spatial imagination is average, so it is difficult to disassemble the pictures of parts, but she can draw illustrations for books and picture albums for ready-made clothes. Dong Niang is basically determined to take over industries such as cloth shops, clothing shops, and embroidery workshops. Although she has no design talent and cannot draw inferences from one example, Li Ju has a lot of unique designs for the future. 12 kinds of designs can be produced a year, and they can be produced for decades. She can just copy and find designers. In addition to studying, Dong Niang also took on some work within her ability, such as teaching children to recognize words, joining Li Yuan's textile sewing team to do needlework, sweeping, watering the garden, etc. She is a very diligent girl, just like her sister Yaoniang. Dong Niang herself is so busy, and Yu Yaoniang, who has to take regular classes, is not even busier. Every day when she opened her eyes, she had 3 hours of classes, half an hour of labor technology learning, and in her free time, she followed her mother to run around. But after half a year, Kishan couldn't stand it anymore. She was just as busy doing odd jobs in Jiuan as she was working in Liuan. Don't talk about personal dignity. Kishan couldn't understand it at all. She only knew that she served tea and water to the jinvs in Jiuan, guided the peacocks, and massaged their legs, and could get a few tips, but she was working for nothing in Liuan. And there was no end to such days. When she came out after learning, she would be like her mother, busy for survival. But when she was in Jiuan, the madam pointed out a clear way for her, that as long as she lay down, she could wear gold and silver, eat delicious food and drink spicy food, which was more comfortable than doing odd jobs in Liuan. Kishan was too young, and had seen too little. How could she know that behind the seemingly making money by lying down was irresistible humiliation and abuse, and a triple brilliant destruction of personality, spirit, and routine? Most jinvs don't have a piece of good meat on their bodies, and those who are plagued by diseases can't live beyond the age of 20. How could Kishan see this fact? How could Kishan, who had never experienced the world, see through the old procuress's sweet talk? So Kishan hated Li Yuan from the bottom of her heart, and hated Li Ju who forced her to study and work. She dreamed of finding a place where she could lie down and live a good life. Ever since she knew that her father had followed her to Jinling, and that her father was a man with a reputation and could be an official, Kishan had been planning to join her father. Coincidentally, her biological father also thought so. Although the father and daughter met for the first day, they quickly reached an agreement. Kishan knew a lot, and was familiar with the situation inside Liuan. Yu Yaoniang was an adult, and had more freedom of action, so the two sides hit it off. After the two recognized each other, they were affectionate for a while, and the calls of daddy and daughter seemed to be true feelings. Kishan wanted to stay, but Yu Yaoniang hoped to use Kishan to get Dong Niang and even Yaoniang back, so he coaxed Kishan into reluctantly agreeing to go back and help him keep an eye on Liuan. They made an appointment for the next meeting, and Kishan reluctantly said goodbye to this scholar and returned to Fengrang mansion with heavy steps. At this time, Dong Niang had already told Yaoniang everything about the meeting today. Yaoniang comforted Dong Niang for a few words, then turned around and explained everything to Chenggyang Li Ju, and said, "The CUI guy really has bad intentions. Otherwise, why wouldn't he even apologize or clarify? He and my sister are not a legitimate couple. It's him who owes my sister the money for taking her in and supporting her over the years. He is such a person. He hasn't sucked enough blood and wants my sister to continue supporting him." Chenggyang was upset with Yu Yaoniang because Li Ju had suffered a secret loss. He just ignored it after hearing what she said. "What I mean is, just ignore him. There are a lot of people coming and going in our family, and people from outside come in and out countless times a day. Find a few more people to talk to them, and the truth will naturally get out. Otherwise, the Marquis and I will be returning to Beijing in a few years anyway, so why bother with this? What do you think, brother? This matter has nothing to do with me. It's insignificant. Madam has taken care of it, and I have nothing to say. Li Ju didn't care at all. He was more concerned about the New Year's Day. After New Year's Day, it was time to start farming. There were new seeds that Yu Fu and his team had to plant. The tasks assigned by His Majesty the Emperor had to be completed. The technical station that was half done last year had to continue cultivation, and the people sent by Chen Wu had to arrange their studies according to local conditions. With so many things to do, why would he care about whether the scholar won or not? Chapter 470, Another Pair of Women's Nature. A few days after Li Ju and Chen Yang settled down at home, it was New Year's Day. This was the first time the couple celebrated the new year after their marriage. They simply did not go anywhere and closed the door to visitors at home. They spent the new year in a sticky way until the 7th day, and only on the 8th day did a few relatives visit one after another. Huang Zhi moved to Jinling at the end of last year. He and the old Zhao family took advantage of the east wind the earliest and accumulated a fortune like a mountain of gold and silver. Now Huang Zhi's own son has traveled around the mountains and rivers like his father, and the Huang family's property in Qingshan City has found a suitable manager to take care of it. Huang Zhi moved to Jinling and chose a quiet courtyard near Li Ju to settle down. The Huang, Li, Yu and other families are very close to each other. Huang Zhi's courtyard is one of the small villas of the Yu family. It is only separated from the Fengrang Marquis mansion by the house of Fugaya and others. Several families worked together to repair the road, arranged corridors, and planted vines, morning glory, banana, bamboo, plum blossoms, and crab apples as embellishments. On rainy days, you don't need to hold an umbrella to walk from the beginning to the end, or even to the Taoist temple and Zen temple next to Li's house. There are different styles walking along the road all year round. But when you get to Li Ju's place, the style of the path suddenly changes from the rich and sentimental scenery of the south of the Yangtze River to pastoral scenery. Several greenhouses are either full of greenery or full of fruits, and there is also a small piece of newly planted rice that has matured. Several plots of land outside the greenhouse have also been deeply plowed and are undergoing the final composting before spring planting. The new rice was cultivated by Yu Fu with students from the school who focus on biology rice and some local envoys who are being trained by the technical station. They have high hopes for this new variety. Envoys from almost all places where rice can be grown participated in this rice breeding, but the people of Bain and Cao and Lingnan Road made the greatest contribution. They brought a new type of rice with a very high yield and 3 crops a year, bringing a new pedigree to the rice in the Central Plains. After Li Ju went to visit all his friends, on the 9th day of the first lunar month, Huang Zhi and his wife, who had visited all their relatives, came with their children to walk around. Huang Zhi walked back and forth in the experimental field several times, and finally stood next to this bunch of new rice. This bunch of rice is really good, with thick stems and tall stature. The full ears are very long and heavy, and the rice ears are bent into several very round and elegant arcs, as if they were a gentle dream. Huang Zhi rarely went to the fields, but he knew intuitively that the yield of this rice would not be low. Yu and Yi jumped and jumped around in the fields. She was born rich, and had never played in the fields. A few early awakened insects, a few scattered frogs, and a few weeds were all fun. Li Ju and Chen Guiyang also took a walk in the backyard early in the morning. Classes at the school and technical station start on the 16th day of the first lunar month. It is still a holiday, but Li Ju can't stay idle. After morning exercises, he will come to the fields for a walk. When he is here, Chen Guiyang will naturally follow. Yuan Yi is wearing a newly cut skirt, a bun on his head, a scarf with cinnabar red pearl trim, 2 small gold combs, a pearl rope around his neck, and a cinnabar silk ribbon with white jade rings hanging behind him. Very cute. Li Ju only responded casually when he saw the family and gave the rest of the time to Yuan Yi. Yuan Yi is now a half-grown girl and can no longer be hugged and lifted up like before. She can only greet her adoptive father from a distance of several feet. Li Ju feels very sorry. Chen Guiyang on the side smiled, called Yu and Yi to come over, and said to Li Ju with a smile, I've heard you talk about her before, but I've never seen her. Although I saw her at their house last time, we didn't talk to each other from a distance, and I couldn't see her clearly. When I saw her today, I found that she really suits your taste. She is as brave and active as you. Yu and Yi said aggrievedly, Godmother, I'm quieter now. What's good about quietness? Your godfather and I think lively is better. Chen Guiyang rubbed her head, called Ziking and others to accompany Yu and Yi, and he still stayed with Li Ju. Chen Guiyang saw Li Ju's love and regret for Yu and Yi. Yu and Yi is pretty, lively, innocent, and yet polite and dignified. Chen Guiyang likes her in his heart, and he can't help but feel regretful when he sees her. It would be great if she was our biological daughter. Even if she is our biological daughter, at this age, I, as a father, can't get close to her. In a few years, the girl will get married, and she won't be able to come back, even if she wants to. Even if she marries someone in the same city, it will be difficult for us to see each other again. Alas. Li Ju was very emotional. Even in my family, young couples are so independent. It's difficult for girls to live with their parents after they get married and start a family. I would like to keep my daughter for the rest of my life, but it's a pity that this will harm her, and it's not right. I said that this has nothing to do with biological or adopted children. As long as it's a daughter, isn't it the same? Hey, Kanja, if we have a daughter in the future, or adopt or foster a daughter we get along with, we won't let her get married. Find a son-in-law for her, and it's better to find someone who can't give birth, so that she won't have to go through the gates of hell because of giving birth. Chen Guiyang secretly hit him twice. What nonsense you are talking about? When will medical technology be more advanced? I can put down this worry. Li Ju also knew that he was thinking too beautifully. Look at Yu Yaoniang many years ago. She was so determined, but she still got married and had children in the end. Although He Gong and his wife often visited their daughter after marriage, it was inconvenient after all, not as good as seeing each other at home every day. Li Ju watched Yu and Yi chatting with the field guard at the door of the greenhouse. After getting permission to go into the greenhouse for a closer look, she cheered and rushed into the vegetable and fruit greenhouse full of fresh green, like a lively crested ibis, or a fluttering butterfly, shuttling between the dark and light green branches and leaves. He and Yu and Yi didn't spend much time together, but even so, he was reluctant to let Yu and Yi get married. If the daughter he raised with his own hands got married, he would be worried for half his life from then on. What worries? Huang Zhi just approached and heard the second half of Li Ju's sentence, so he asked. Li Ju smiled and said, I'm worried that my good girl would fall in love with some bad boy. Huang Zhi said, I just had an idea, and you happened to mention it yourself, so I'll just mention it. When you accept an apprentice someday, my requirements are not high. Just someone like Fu Gaya or Sanlang or Silan will do. He must be handsome, talented, well-behaved, and honest. His parents must either be able to move with him or be locals. In this way, if I marry my daughter to your apprentice, I can see him all the time, and you can see him all the time too. It's the best of both worlds for both families, right? I think so too, but I can't choose such a person. It's already very rare to find someone like him, and he must have good character and personality, and you and Yi must like him himself, which is even more difficult. But it will take about 10 years, so don't worry, don't rush, and look for him slowly. Brother, are you visiting today, or do you have something else? If you don't have anything else, I have something to talk to you about. Huang Zhi joked with him. Tell me what you want to talk to me about first, and then I'll decide if you have something to talk to you about. Li Ju laughed. Brother, please go in and sit down first. I can't entertain guests here yet. Let me change my clothes. Let's have dinner here today, and we can talk slowly. The matter itself is a good thing, but it's a bit tedious. Brother, you were in charge of compiling a dictionary before, and this experience is very valuable. Today's matter is similar, but it's more professional. I won't hide it from you, brother. This is the intention of the emperor, and the imperial edict should arrive in a few days. Li Ju was talking about two major events. One of the imperial edicts issued by His Majesty the Emperor after watching the test run of the steam locomotive, namely, compiling a summary of local customs and a summary of official roads and nearby contour maps. Chapter 471. Making the best use of talents. Li Ju thought about it carefully. If he was asked to do the two things related to the map that the emperor had asked him to do, and the things about the steam engine laboratory, he would be exhausted and could not do it. At this time, he thought of finding a helper. The first candidate was Yu Yaoniang, who was good at physics, and the second candidate was Huang Zhi, who had experience in compilation and summary, traveled around the world, and had geographical knowledge, and was familiar with more prosperous cities. There were already official roads and nearby contour maps, and they could be processed with maps. Maps were ready, and if the contour map did not require particularly high accuracy, existing geography students could be trained and put on the job. Huang Zhi's experience qualified him to preside over this matter. At least it was not difficult for him to see if there were any problems with the contour lines. In addition, there was the choice of the city where the railway was to be built. The emperor had not decided where to build it. This matter needed to refer to the route map of the official road and find a suitable section for construction. The emperor's idea was to first find a section of the road that was suitable for building rails, and then select a suitable city as a hub with the help of a city map. This idea is reasonable, and Li Ju has nothing to complain about. He just needs someone to sum up the prosperous places and confidential places in the world, and put them together with the official roadmap for reference. Isn't Huang Zhi the right person to do this? Don't bother two people with one thing. Li Ju explained the whole thing clearly, and Huang Zhi was very happy in his heart, but he still had to be stubborn. Brother Baxiu, you came here and left all the affairs of Kingshan to me. I have just had a few days of peace and quiet, and you have come up with so many new tricks. I have been busy for you for half my life. Li Ju thought that the charcoal basin was too hot in the house, but he couldn't wear home clothes at all when there were guests. He was forced to wear a set of clothes, and was so hot that he took out his summer folding fan. He fanned himself, not caring about Huang Zhi's nagging, but replied, I won't say much else, just ask you, do you do it or not? Yu Yaoniang and Zhu laughed at the same time. Huang Zhi's face turned red. What a person you are. You make me work for you for nothing, and you don't even let me say a few words to you? How can I say no? This is another good opportunity to go down in history. Let's not talk about this one. Just looking at the benefits behind it, I can't just stand by and watch. If it really works, won't everyone from the emperor to the peddlers thank you? I don't want thanks or anything. It's enough to let a few more people survive. So I'll record this matter in the name of Brother Huang. Brother Huang, please go home and make a list of the people and things you want. I'll sort out all the information and drawings I can find and send them to you. However, someone needs to draw a backup. I think I'll continue to embroider the sample. Now he's the only one who can draw without deviation. Yu Yaoniang was gradually getting familiar with the people in Li Yuan. When he heard a strange name, he looked at Yu Yaoniang and Li Ju. Yu Yaoniang came over and explained what the embroidery sample was. Yu Yaoniang nodded. So that's the kind of person I vaguely remember. If there is such a lady in our boudoir. Zhu used to be in the upper class circle in the capital, and she had some connections with Yu Yaoniang. It just so happened that she remembered this matter, so she blurted out, Your Highness is not mistaken, it's the daughter of Tutor Yang, Miss Kinj. Ah, it's her. I remember that day. It couldn't be Sister Zhu, right? She came from Jiangnan and brought us a craftsman's purse. The pattern was very vivid, something we had never seen before. It was Kinj who drew a dozen patterns on the spot for us to take back and trace. Kinj had the ability to copy at 1-to-1, but after she got married and encountered those things, she never touched needlework and brush again, and I almost forgot about it. Yu Yaoniang pondered for a moment, and when Li Ju and Huang Zhi had finished talking, he said to Li Ju, Brother, I thought of someone who can do nothing else but trace maps for us. That's the daughter of Teifu Yang. She is just like the embroidery sample you mentioned. She is very good at finding pictures, and folding them on paper is more accurate than us tracing them. She has returned to her parents' home, and above her are Teifu and his second wife, and in the middle are my previous son-in-law and his second wife. She is caught in the middle, and is in a dilemma all day long. being bullied from both sides. I think most of the maps are in the capital, and our railway must be based on the capital, so the roads and maps near the capital are particularly important. We are far away in Jinling, and if we want to get news from the capital, it will take several months to go back and forth. It is better to entrust Madame Yang to copy a map of the capital and the map of the capital. If there are changes in the roads near the capital, she can also modify it and send it as soon as possible. Take this opportunity to let her choose a quiet place to draw the map, just to avoid the things in her family. What do you think? Chen Guiyang said, feeling a little uneasy. After all, Yang Qinj was her sister-in-law in her previous marriage. Although she and Qinj were close friends who became sisters-in-law before getting married, and their friendship was more important than anything else, but it was hard to guarantee what others would think. Li Ju didn't care about the Yang family she mentioned at all, and said, if you think it's okay, then it's okay. I'm afraid it's not easy for me to intervene in this matter involving other women, so I have to entrust this matter to Madam. Chen Guiyang said, in this case, I will do it. Let someone take a letter to Madam Yang first. By the way, let the girls' school in the capital find some people who can draw and copy pictures, and ask them to send them to Jinling. I think you will definitely need a lot of people to make pictures in the future. How can one person be enough? I'm going to open a girls' school in Jinling, and it's just right to add a course in addition to embroidery samples. Li Ju nodded. In the future, with more machines, the demand for people who draw pictures will naturally increase. It's not a bad thing to arrange some people in advance to learn this skill to make a living. Yu Yaoniang also wants her sister to learn this, and they are all ahead of the curve. Li Ju and Huang Zhi explained it clearly, and Huang Zhi naturally prepared in advance when he returned home. A few days later, it was still the first month of the year, and Li Ju sent the embroidery sample and Zhang's mother to Jinling. Zhang's mother still couldn't see clearly, and she still lived with Wu's mother. Yu Yaoniang Zhang went to Huang Zhi's house and started a new life of working. In addition to the 2 maps that needed to be compiled, there was also a steam engine related laboratory/technical station to be built. After Li Ju and Chen Guiyang discussed it, they directly used the technical station next to the original Yaochen temple. Chen Guiyang built a prototype at the time, and there was a textile factory in operation next to it for experiments, which accumulated a lot of technology and experience. Later, Chen Guiyang Li Ju went to the capital, and the emperor ordered to build a steam locomotive in the capital first, so a group of experienced craftsmen were drawn one after another, and the remaining people were not enough to push the technology forward. However, they were still able to maintain the status quo. At least the textile factory under the name of Sanjiu, and now under the name of Chen Guiyang had installed several steam boilers. In addition to the steam engine, they had many fragmentary inventions, the most typical of which were the further improvement of the water-powered loom and the prototype of the cotton gin. After the mechanization of textiles, production efficiency soared hundreds and thousands of times, and maritime trade expanded overseas markets. In the end, raw materials still restricted the development of the textile industry, so the cotton gin came into being. After the cotton gin improved the efficiency of separating cotton from debris, the only problem left was the source of cotton. This problem cannot be directly solved by mechanization, but it is not impossible to partially improve it. The contradiction between the small population and large land in Dayang is very prominent, and it is in a period of population growth. Maritime trade has led to further prosperity of commerce, and agriculture is relatively lagging behind. His Majesty the Emperor cannot relax on grain farming. He must ensure that there is enough food for people to survive before thinking about other things. Li Ju plans to organize a laboratory to overcome the technical difficulties of steam locomotives, and at the same time, he plans to set up an experimental group to overcome fertilizer technology and farming machinery design. Chapter 472, 2 Family Funerals. Most of Dayang's grain-producing areas are not suitable for mechanical farming, but the current situation is like this. Even if Li Ju can only increase productivity by 1%, it is worthwhile for Dayang to invest resources in it. Now there are few people and a lot of land, and it is a good thing to grow 1 more acre of land. In the future, there may be more people and less land, so it will be more necessary to rely on intensive farming to ensure that there is enough food to feed the population. It is quite inappropriate to put a steam engine on agricultural machinery, but Li Ju cannot stop the technical station from doing research and then expect them to put the internal combustion engines that will appear in the future directly on tractors, tillers, and pumps without any accumulation. The failures in the early stage will accumulate enough experience. Without this experience, the things that come later will become castles in the air, and they may collapse at any level. So Li Ju took the opportunity of the Emperor's edict to build an agricultural laboratory for the steam locomotive technical station. After receiving the report, His Majesty the Emperor also thought it was okay. He thought this was in line with Li Ju's personality of Feng Ranghao. When the steam locomotive technical station was established, almost the best craftsmen in the whole Jiangnan region and students with special accumulation of physics, chemistry, biology, and mathematics in the school were transferred away. Li Ju was not soft on his wife's industry. He transferred a group of people from Chengyang's technical station, almost draining Chengyang's technical station. Chengyang forced him to fill the apprentices at 3 times the rate, and promised that the craftsmen in the technical station would take turns to teach the apprentices in Chengyang. Only then did he give up. There were 63 names on the list, which was the configuration of a super large technical station. The houses and logistics were equipped very quickly, which really made Li Ju's own technical station, which he had built privately, very envious. However, this kind of excitement lasted less than 2 days, and 2 consecutive funerals disrupted all the rhythms. The first thing was the death of Yaoniang. Yaoniang still did not survive this spring. He fell asleep in the middle of the night of the 27th day of the first lunar month, and died very peacefully in his dream. Yaoniang was nearly 90 years old when he died. He was free of illness and pain, and had no worries. It was an absolute happy funeral. The Yu family had been prepared for this, and had hung up white banners and mourning couplets early on. Li Ju and Chengyang, as own people of the Yu family, helped to organize the funeral. Fu Ge discussed it with her family, and informed several masters of the Yu family, and then brought Yu Ai to help as a grandson. Yunan's funeral was very grand. Half of Jiangnan came to celebrate his birthday. This time, 1/3 of the high-ranking officials also came to the funeral. People are very realistic. After Yunan's death, Yu Fu, the pillar of the family, was not a prominent official. Yu Jin also took the path of studying in the King Liu school, but did not enter the cabinet. He suddenly lost his voice in the court, so some overly shrewd families only sent funeral gifts, and did not send anyone to mourn. It was not until Mr. Yu sent his own son to live in the Yu family and help with various matters that there were a little more people attending the funeral. Soon after, His Majesty the Emperor issued an edict to give Yunnan the posthumous title of Duke Wenjing, awarded Yu Fu a 4th rank honorary title, and awarded Yu Jin and other Yu brothers with minor titles. This is all customary, and there is no need to elaborate. If the Yu family wants to catch up with the glory of Yunan's era, it still depends on whether Yu Fu and Yu Jin, the 2 most promising masters, can make it into the circle of 3 dukes and 9 ministers. Her Majesty the Queen also sent an edict. In addition to the usual greetings, there was an additional letter sent to Chengyang for delivery, asking Yu Sanlangji and his wife Zhao to leave for Beijing immediately after the mourning period was over. This letter from Her Majesty the Queen looked strange to outsiders. Although not many people knew about it, people with a keen sense of smell had already put the Yu family in the column of note. The Queen was actually considering the private affairs between Sanjiu, her daughter and the Yu family, but there is no need to elaborate. The Yu family knew it themselves, and hurriedly thanked the grace, and expressed gratitude and tears, that they would arrange for Yu Sanlang and his wife, to go to Beijing in 9 months. According to the custom in Jiangnan, grandchildren whose parents are still alive can be less strict in mourning for their grandparents. Yu Sanlang is not the eldest grandson, let alone the grandson who inherits the family, so mourning is even more relaxed. 9 months is enough, and the folk custom is only 3 months. There are precedents and old stories to follow for the affairs of the Yu family, but they need some help. It doesn't matter if there is no one. Zhaolian and the 2 wives can take care of such a small matter. Another funeral was far less expected than the Yu family, and it was not so grand. It was the news that Wu Bijia's wife he died of dystocia. After giving birth to the eldest son, Yu Yaoniang was unable to give birth again. At this time, Old Wu had been remembered by his grandfather because he did a good job in Jiangnan. Grandfather hoped that Old Wu would return to the capital to help the main branch. He never thought about how to divide the Wu family's property into Old Wu's branch. In Mr. Wu's plan, this grandson would be the relatives of the side branch who guarded the ancestral hall in the future. Among them, talented people could help the main branch, but they could not obtain the key wealth that only the main branch could inherit. Grandfather Wu looked down on Old Wu's stepmother for calculating offspring for a little money, and for not having the temperament of a mistress of the house, but he also looked down on Yu Yaoniang, a daughter-in-law who was born as a craftsman. Yu Yaoniang had only one son in the past few years of marriage, and she didn't even have a daughter. Grandfather Wu wanted to give Old Wu a few concubines to expand his family. However, in fact, Yu Yaoniang didn't give birth, only because she and Old Wu took some contraceptive measures. After marriage, Yu Yaoniang still learned some miscellaneous knowledge, such as painting and so on, and her life was not idle. And her eldest son was chubby and clever, and taking care of this naughty boy also exhausted Old Wu and Yu Yaoniang's thoughts. Old Wu didn't have an obsession with offspring. He had so many brothers, and he didn't need him to pass on the incense, so the couple tacitly didn't want to have children. In this era, there were no contraceptive pills, so it was still okay to calculate the safe period. In addition, Old Wu was not good at sex, and he would only have sex with his wife when he was in the mood every month. So he never had children again. Later, she was targeted by the grandfather of Old Wu. Yu Yaoniang calculated the time. The eldest son was sensible and went to school. He had his own teacher to teach him, so she had some free time. Besides, it was true that the eldest son could not enter the officialdom without help, even if it was just to give him an uncle, so Yu Yaoniang wanted another child. It was this child who died of dystocia due to malposition of the fetus. Even though Old Wu invited a female doctor from Liuan to rescue her at that time, Yu Yaoniang died of heavy bleeding. It is said that basins of blood were brought out at that time, and people were almost bleeding dry. This was said by the nanny of Old Wu's family who came to report the news to the Li family. Scholar Wu and Li Ju have always had a good relationship, and He Gong is still working in Liuan. It is reasonable to report to Li Ju. If Scholar Wu does not report it, He Gong and his wife will have to take care of their daughter's funeral and worry about their grandson, so they have to report to Li Ju. The nanny was a well-known figure in the Old Wu family. She was loyal to Yu Yaoniang and young Master Wu. When she talked about the death of Yu Yaoniang, her eyes were red. Li Ju said nothing, just stayed there, as if he was thinking a lot, but also as if he was thinking nothing. Chen Guiyang looked at him, then at the old nanny, and said, "The Marquis and I know about it. Ziking, send your mother to rest and change clothes. The Marquis and I will discuss it carefully." If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 473, Condolences. It was almost spring, and Jinling was already warm and gentle. The breeze blowing on the face is not cold. The sun was gentle, and the drizzle and light clouds were also clear and peaceful. It was such a spring, but Li Ju and Chen Guiyang felt cold for no reason. They asked the old mother of the Wu family for details, and after Teet and Yu Fu informed them, they left the Yu mansion where Yunan's body was still being kept, and came to Shannyang to visit Wu Bijie. He Gong had been working in Jinling and Qingshan, and this time he was taken to Shannyang by Li Ju. The governor of Shannyang had been replaced a long time ago, and the new one was none other than Lao Zhang. Yes, Lao Zhang, the former magistrate of Yu County. The Zhang family usually cast their nets everywhere, and finally caught the fat fish Li Ju, and then they would invest resources in Lao Zhang who caught this fish. Since Lao Zhang has the resources of the capital, and is capable and smooth, it is common sense for him to be promoted. Being a county magistrate in Shannyang is like being gilded. Everyone knows that the entire Dasan County is in a stage of rapid development. Qingshan City is limited by natural geographical restrictions, and is almost at its upper limit. The only way to improve it is to increase productivity again. However, Shannyang is different. Yaoniang is a few years behind Kingshan City, but the upper limit of development given by natural conditions is a few points higher. As long as the county magistrate of Dasan County does not mess around, it will basically be a stable rise. Liu Zhang is very satisfied with this. Li Ju came to Yaoniang to visit Wu Shushan. Liu Zhang took a leave from the government office and came to accompany him. Investing in Li Ju is Liu Zhang's most proud deal, especially when he saw the inseparable couple in front of him. The princess was not arrogant, and Li Ju did not forget his roots. Liu Zhang was even more proud. He and Shengyang Li Ju greeted each other, exchanged a few words, and was personally welcomed by Liu Wu, who came hurriedly to the main hall at the back. Liu Wu has been operating in the local area for several years and has a good foundation. At this time, it has been several days since the condolences were paid, and people still often come to express their condolences. His mother accompanied her daughter in the morning hall, and she lost a lot of weight because she had no appetite. He Gong and her only had this daughter, who had been their support for half their lives, and who they cared about all their lives. Suddenly, her daughter was gone, and his mother felt like the sky had fallen. The same was true for He Gong. He had no son, and his daughter was very talented, so he had always raised her as his son. His daughter was indeed very capable, and the family was thriving, but it was cut short here. He Gong and his wife hugged each other and cried in front of their daughter's coffin. Mother, he couldn't help but beat He Gong while crying. I asked you to marry a little girl, at least give birth to a child to stand here. Now that the girl is gone, there will be someone to cry and throw pots in the future. My poor grandson will also have an uncle to help him. But you insist that having a girl is enough. What's good now? What's good? My poor son. My poor grandson. Old man, why am I so miserable? Ah. Wu Shushan was also emaciated. Yu Yaoniang was his wife, whom he personally chose. After marriage, the couple had always been deeply in love. The sudden loss of his wife was like a pair of broken wings and a pair of flowers falling. However, Wu Shushan was a traditional scholar official who paid great attention to self-cultivation and emotional control. Therefore, his love was rational and calculated. His sadness also had a scale, and he would not blindly indulge in it. Moreover, his career and family did not allow him to indulge in personal emotions too much. Seeing his parents-in-law sobbing, Wu Shushan, who had been getting better, shed some more tears with them. Then, as if he was afraid of being seen crying, he hurried to the back hall to meet Li Ju and Princess Shengyang. After a round of formalities, Wu Shushan sat opposite Zhang Junshao. Li Ju should have said something to comfort him, but he couldn't. Yu Yaoniang was the director he had chosen for the textile factory. After being poached by this man, it was like this in a few years, leaving the old parents and son crying. And it's not over after crying. The old age of He Gong and his wife, and the future of Yu Yaoniang's son are all urgent problems to be solved. Old Wu is Li Ju's friend. Yu Yaoniang was once Li Ju's subordinate, and He Gong is the foreman that Li Ju relies on very much, so Li Ju can't comfort the living. After a long while, Li Ju managed to utter two words, "My condolences." Wu Shushan was stunned for a moment, then burst into tears again. "Brother, I'm sorry for you. If I had known this would happen, I wouldn't have poached your people." Shengyang paused and stopped what he wanted to say. It seems that this person is still a person. What he is sad about now is that Yu Yaoniang died of dystocia, not other things. She has seen too many men who think of the power of the Yu family as the first thing they can't break after their wives die. Li Ju comforted her a few more times. At this time, Yu Yaoniang's parents also supported each other and came to the living room. He Gong was not like Liu Wu, who had self-restraint. His mind was full of his dead daughter with a pale face. He sobbed and said to Li Ju, "Master, my daughter is gone. My daughter is gone, Master." He kept repeating it over and over again, as if he could have another daughter. Li Ju already had a complete pension system for the elderly who have worked for him all their lives. He would take care of them and see them to the end. He Gong was obviously one of them. Li Ju was even thinking about whether he should consider the social security system. In the end, he gave up the idea because there was a lack of effective supervision. I'm afraid that in the era of Dayang, social security only paid in but not returned. The corrupt officials who could not control themselves took the money and burned the account books. who can testify against whom. However, Hegong's problem is not just the problem of no one to support him. His only daughter is gone, and there is still a place for him to rest emotionally. Li Ju hesitated, thinking about finding an orphan girl with good character from Hegong's apprentices to adopt as his daughter as a consolation. Of course, this would have to wait until Hegong and his wife were emotionally stable. Wu Shushan said to Hegong, father-in-law, the wise man Yao missed Taishan and Taishu the most. Please take care of yourself. I'm exhausted. If the two old people are in bad health, I don't think I can see Yao in the underworld. How can your mother-in-law and I take care of ourselves? I wish we could let this cruel girl take us away. How old is she? How could she bear to leave us two old things? What a cruel girl. When Hegong heard the nickname of his daughter, he couldn't stop crying. The three of them cried for half a day, and their eyes were dry when they cried. Then they sat at the table and carefully planned the future. The lifespan of the ancients was there. Few people lived to the age of 50, and many pregnant women and babies died in the pupa. But Hegong and his wife were old, and they always thought that their daughter could live to 50 or 60. They didn't expect that she died at this age because of this, so they couldn't accept it for a while. However, people are resilient after all. The son-in-law did not have any intention of turning hostile, and the host family was very considerate. Mr. He and his wife put aside their worries a little and were able to participate in their daughter's funeral. They also have a precious grandson who is still young, and they don't know what his future will be like. Scholar Wu had thought about this a lot in the past few days. Now that he could speak out, and Li Ju was a witness, he told the truth. Yao's dowry has more than doubled over the years because of proper management. I'm willing to return this part to my father-in-law to support the two elders in their old age. If the two elders miss their grandson, they can visit from time to time. Every year I will let the youngest son stay at your home for a few days to accompany you. The youngest son is still young, and I'm worried that remarrying too early will not be good for him, so I want to wait until the youngest son is 15 before making plans to remarry. However, my mansion cannot be without someone to take care of the household affairs. Please forgive me. I want to choose a gentle and kind person from Yao's maids as my concubine to take care of the affairs in the backyard. What I can guarantee here is that I will not have other children before the youngest son is 15. When a husband can make such a promise, Hegong and his wife have nothing to say. Li Ju persuaded them, if you had thought of not having any other children before the youngest son was 15, this wouldn't have happened. In this case, I will bear witness to you. If you, old Wu, are unfaithful and treat the youngest son badly in the future, I will make the decision for you two elders. On the other hand, if old Wu wants to remarry, you two elders can do nothing to stop him. Your wife's dowry will be returned in full, but the doubled part will be left for the youngest son as future expenses, which also shows his mother's love for him. Chapter 474. Afterwards, Wu Shushan thought about returning his wife's dowry and the added value of her dowry to her parents' home for the sake of Hegong and his wife's husband, and also to avoid being criticized in the future. In ancient times, although there was a saying that a wife would return to her parents' home with her dowry after being divorced, it was not often implemented in practice. Most of her dowry would be occupied by her husband's family under various names. The dowry of a woman who died accidentally would not be sent back to her parents' home, so Wu Shushan's decision was quite special, and he made a great concession. However, Li Ju thought that Wu Shushan would definitely remarry in the future, and his eldest son would definitely grow up under the care of his father. He was worried that Wu Shushan would be unwilling or regretful in the future, so he made this suggestion. With his mother's dowry in hand, his grandparents can still meet from time to time. If his stepmother does not tolerate him in the future, he will at least have someone to rely on. This is all Li Ju can do for the time being. If what he is worried about really happens in the future, he can still help, but now, this is all. Ziking and the mute lit a stick of incense for the medicine lady on behalf of Li Ju Chengyang, and recorded a funeral gift. That was the end of it. Hegong had to stay until his daughter was buried, and Li Ju and Chengyang said goodbye after dinner. They were outsiders, and they were accompanied by many guards and followers. Wu Shusheng's house was so small that it was impossible to accommodate them, and the people nearby were not convenient for the princess to stay overnight, so they simply returned to Jinling after dinner. They stayed in the post house in the north of Shangyang city that night. Chen Guiyang was not sleepy, and Li Ju, who always had a very good sleep quality, couldn't sleep either. The couple baked pancakes for a while. Chen Guiyang got up and asked the night watch girl to light the lamp. She pushed Li Ju and said, "I can't sleep anyway, so why not go out for a walk?" When I was upset before, I would look at a few lanterns and a few stars and moons, and I would calm down. In the palace, she opened the window to watch, and in Yang's house, she leaned on the wall to watch. The rules were the rules on her body, but her heart yearned for a free heart. Chen Guiyang has never been a conservative woman who sticks to the rules. Li Ju nodded, put on the coat for his wife, and took a cloak for himself. The couple went to the roof together. It was a clear day, with a small moon and many stars. The wind was still very cold, but the coolness had already revealed a hint of warmth. The Milky Way had not risen yet, but the sky was already full of brilliant stars, making the people watching the stars look very small. Do you know why I'm so persistent in wanting a child like you? Don't walk in front of me. Don't let me send you away. Let me be selfish this time. They both spoke at the same time, talking about different things, but something else. Chen Guiyang said, "I asked you to be selfish, so you have to let me be selfish too. Otherwise, you will abandon me. What should I do? What should I do? You are so annoying. You gave me so much and so good, but you will take it back. What should the person you spoiled do then?" Li Ju replied, "I will not take everything back. People should plan ahead. I will try my best to consider more for you. In the future I will leave this world before you, and I must leave behind enough perfect arrangements to ensure that you live 100 years without worries. But that's not you. I want you as a person, not your things. If I can have a child like you, it's at least a thought. Or, if I have a child, I won't be so partial to you. Then, I won't worry about gains and losses because of you. Kanja, I'm not crazy. Oh, I risk losing you. You risk losing your life, just for a child who may not look like me, but will definitely compete with me for favor? Besides, this matter depends on fate. If he comes, we will naturally be happy. If he doesn't come, it means we are not destined, and there is no need to worry too much. What I fear most is that the scene in the daytime will happen to you and me again." The starry sky was speechless, and the two of them stood quietly in the starry sky and talked emotionally for a while. Li Ju's style suddenly changed. According to scientific research, women live longer than men, not to mention that you are younger than me. If nothing unexpected happens, you can still live for 10 or 20 years after I'm gone. But childbirth will interrupt this rhythm. Madam, he is the most typical example. Didn't Yu Yaoniang's mother almost die early? It is not certain who is left behind and who dies first. Let's look at it from this purely scientific point of view. Don't force it is the most rational optimal solution. Do you still remember what the optimal solution means? Chen Guiyang certainly remembered it, but she kept silent and finally smiled. The optimal solution. Of course I remember it. That is, if there is no point in talking, don't talk about it. Just enjoy the scenery to avoid unnecessary troubles. I try not to let you feel the feeling of where other people who came to watch the moon together, and the scenery is vaguely like old years. You also try hard to reproduce your family's medical science as soon as possible, so that I can have the best of both worlds. Li Ju knew that Chen Yang was backing down, but she seemed unable to move forward. The law of offspring, in this era, could not be forced by human power. Even if Li Ju cooperated again, there would be no result. All Chen Yang could do was to adjust her mindset from wanting urgently to not forcing it. There are too many things that cannot be forced. The dead are gone, and the living must continue to move forward. Li Ju and Chen Yang hurried back and forth, rushing to return to Jinling before the end of Yunnan's funeral. They sent Yunnan's coffin out of the city, and no one followed behind. Yunnan was to be buried in the Yu family's ancestral tomb, where his wife who died young was buried. He would be buried with his wife. In addition, there were several tombs of his concubines who died earlier, and were very much his favorite. In addition to the burial of the coffin, there was also an arrangement for the tablet to be placed in the ancestral temple. With Yunnan gone, the Yu family is no longer the top wealthy family that had great influence on His Majesty the Emperor in previous years. However, to the entire Yu clan, Yunnan is still the most promising one among all of them, from the 18 generations ago to Yusun and Yu Wu. His son Yufu ranks second. So naturally, the portraits of Yunnan and his wife Yunnan are hung in the middle of the ancestral hall, and their tablets firmly occupy the C position in the middle. Later, when Li Ju was calculating the total funeral accounts at the Yu family, he overheard it, and asked curiously, when he came back, "When we are old, will we also go to the ancestral hall and place tablets like this? Will mine be placed at your house, or will yours be placed at my house?" This stumped Cheng Yang. Cheng Yang had never thought so much before, and she was too lazy to think. "I think they will all be placed at your house. I remember that there were no tablets for princesses in our ancestral temple. There were a few very favored princesses who died before they got married and were buried in the tomb of the great ancestor. There is no ancestral hall in my family. I'm shocked. We are the first couple to enter the Li family's ancestral hall. Your ancestors passed on so many books, knowledge, and money to you, but you don't even have an ancestral hall? This is strange. No wonder you never mentioned the matter of opening an ancestral hall to tell your ancestors after you came back. I thought you were shy, but it turns out that there was no such thing. But if we have no successors, it doesn't matter. How can there be no successors? I have plenty of disciples. Maybe I can even adopt a few adopted sons and daughters in the future." Li Ju had no interest in the ancestral hall because he did not believe in incense and did not believe that people 3 generations later would still remember him. If his descendants 3 generations later still remembered him, then he must have done something, and then the people who remembered him would not only be his own family. Cheng Yang, however, became interested. Since we still have disciples, and maybe even adopted sons and daughters, let's build the ancestral hall. Only when our family has an ancestral hall will we have a place to stay in our hearts. Li Ju waved his hand and was about to refuse, but he took the words back and changed them to, "Then leave it to Yu Yaoniang and the others to set up the building. I have some special arrangements I want to make. Let me know when they are done, and I will do it myself." Chapter 475, Ancestral Hall. In the end, the ancestral hall was never built because Li Ju and Cheng Yang still had to return to the capital to settle down. Although Li Ju's hometown was near Qingshan City, there was no ancestral tomb or clanland, which did not conform to the ancient people's psychological location of ancestral home and ancestral hall. Moreover, it was unlikely that Li Ju would return to Jinling to take root in the future, and it would be even more difficult for his descendants to come back. Even if they wanted to build their own ancestral hall, it would be more appropriate to build it in the capital. Li Ju was taught to understand these twists and turns, so he didn't continue to think about it. Spring plowing has begun, and it is the busiest season for the technical station. Li Ju was away for the whole year last year, and the main courses were all general courses and practical operation courses similar to administrative management. Now those envoys and students can all start from scratch and build a framework, and can also deal with the local powerful forces. Most people used to look down on the society of the lower and lower classes, but now they are honest and willing to sit down and talk with tenants and coolies. As for accounting, checking account books, checking loopholes and deficits, it was even easier. They basically completed the transformation from empty talkers to practical people. Li Ju's trip to the north did affect their progress, but there was nothing they could do. They were not idle. From the second half of last year to the beginning of this spring, they almost traveled all over the 300 li area of Jinling and set up more than a dozen technical stations of various sizes. By chance, the technical station system under the rule of Jinling has formed a complete system. It is only waiting for these envoys and students to be replaced by regular employees, which will be no different from what Li Ju expected. From the Jinling technical station to each village, the channels for the dissemination of new technologies and new knowledge are very clear, and rewards and punishments, income and expenditure, appointments and dismissals are all in accordance with rules. The first generation of technology they promoted was the composting technology that Li Ju adapted to local conditions. Composting technology has been studied for a long time, but with the continuous research of craftsmen and farmers, the technology has been innovated for several generations, and fertilizers with different effects have gradually evolved. Although the effect is not very obvious, at least they are on the right track. And when Li Ju checked their internship records, he found that Zinziake mentioned that there had been inexplicable fires during the composting fermentation in the field. He mentioned it several times later, all of which were to trace the cause of such fires. At first, Zinziake thought that it was a small number of local villagers who were jealous or dissatisfied with the technical station, who deliberately set fire and destroyed it. This is not uncommon in the local area. Every village has more or less such black sheep. The only difference is whether the village chief, the old clan elders and other villagers can control them. But over time, Zinziake came to the conclusion that this was not man-made, but an unintentional mistake. He observed that every time such a thing happened, it was next to the fermentation pile, and was accompanied by a clear smell of rotten eggs. He gradually came to the conclusion that this phenomenon was related to the fire. Finally, through several very dangerous arson experiments, combined with the information learned in the general education class about the diffusion of molecules in the composition of air, Zinziake concluded that the fermentation pile would produce some strange and smelly combustible gases, which would catch fire when encountering people who were on their way with torches or people who were delivering fire to other families. Fortunately, most of the incidents occurred in the summer, when there was plenty of rain, and there were wet mosses and sticky trees everywhere. The fermentation piles were mostly placed in open areas and carried out in cement pools, so it was easy to extinguish such small fires. Zinziake only reminded the technical stations to be careful of such situations, especially in relatively dry seasons and relatively dry areas, and to be careful of water leakage. But modern people Li Ju saw at a glance what Zinziake was talking about. Isn't this just biogas? This is really a pleasant surprise. Winter is not very suitable for biogas fermentation, and everyone is busy celebrating the holidays. The new ducklings, chickens, pigs, and lambs have not started to be raised yet, so Li Ju didn't mention it until the busiest period of spring plowing passed, and the experts in Kang chickens and ducks began to hatch chickens and ducks. Li Ju temporarily inserted biogas classes into the school and technical stations, and started to talk about the technology of fermentation and composting from biogas. Biogas technology itself is not very difficult, but it is a little risky. Li Ju had to carefully teach people about pressure, force, fermentation, and temperature. Biogas digesters can replenish fuel, reduce the pollution of groundwater sources by human and animal feces, and improve the efficiency of fertilizing fields. They are quite practical. Now it is not a big problem for a village to be equipped with 2 or 3 biogas digesters. Larger villages can even build more than 10. These biogas digesters can at least ensure that the village's ancestral halls, clan schools and other places that have public functions can use biogas as fuel, reducing the village's public expenditure. This is because the breeding industry is not yet developed enough. If the breeding industry is further developed, it is not impossible for every household to use a small biogas digester. Biogas technology involves different places, different fermentation materials, different fermentation times and temperatures and other conditions. In the previous general education classes, basic knowledge such as geography and climate had already been popularized. Li Ju said that the fermentation materials in Lingnan Road are mainly rice straw, sugarcane bagasse, etc. The suitable time for fermentation is from March to October. The key issues to focus on are the consumption of fermentation materials and the maintenance of humidity and pH when the temperature is too high in summer. In the northern regions, it is highly likely that biogas will not be used in winter. What should be paid attention to is not to let the biogas pool dry up. There are even many places with high temperatures and few days throughout the year, and there is no potential for the development of aquaculture. The straw is crushed and returned to the field, which is not suitable for biogas at all. Starting from the biogas pool technology, after explaining this set of composting fermentation technology with different materials and methods, it can be extended to industries that can be developed in various places according to local conditions. Li Ju can use the biogas pool as a case to systematically demonstrate the operation of the technical station. By the way, he can also take the opportunity of popularizing the biogas pool technology to make the technical stations in various villages in Jinling established by the students a reality, and all the food, manpower and positions are arranged properly. Then, we started with the research and development of biogas digesters, how to form experimental records, how to convert them into usable teaching materials, how to teach them to villages one level at a time. All the details were put into practice. The most efficient approach should be to check the efficiency of the technology, that is, to eliminate the technology that has low practical value or does not match the cost and results after it is developed. But Li Ju removed this level of operation. He felt that he could open more doors for these smart, hard-working, and ambitious people. He should trust the wisdom of people of this era. It is true that some technologies are generally practical, and they can only increase grain production a little bit after working hard. But what if someone can improve this technology? What if this technology can soar to the sky if it is transferred to other places? What if this technology is the pre-development technology of some advanced technology? Li Ju has such a broad vision. How dare he use his experience to veto a possibility? Take the biogas digester for example. In fact, it is also a technology that will be eliminated soon. Its output is unstable, and it needs to be maintained by manpower. Once coal and electricity are popularized, the biogas digester will disappear immediately. But it still has its value in some places. Or take the steam engine as an example. How efficient was Watt's steam engine? How efficient was the internal combustion engine after many improvements and innovations? Can we say that Watt's steam engine is not important? If a similar inefficient predecessor technology was invented in Lingnan Road, but the person who could improve it was in Bihai, if this predecessor technology was eliminated, then when would the person who improved it see it? Pathfinders of scientific and technological development must take some detours and must pay a lot of extra labor, but the final result will definitely not disappoint. The result of generations of trial and error will be an extremely large technical reserve. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.